Reviving his life, he arrived at the pre-Qin era, but this world was different from what he remembered. It was a world where martial arts were revered and swords ruled the world. Confucianism incorporates Confucianism into the Tao, and the Yin-Yang school's Yin-Yang techniques are unparalleled in power. The Taoist school has two schools of thought, heaven and man, and the Mohist school loves both non-aggression and non-aggression. 100 schools of thought, 7 kingdoms and rivers. The 7 kingdoms of the world stand side by side, and the strong Qin desires the unification of the world. This is a Confucian disciple who cultivates himself, regulates his family, governs the country, pacifies the world, and wields his sword in the 7 kingdoms and rivers. Keywords of the novel. Qin Dynasty's Confucianism World. No pop-ups. Qin Dynasty's Confucianism World Complete Collection Download. Qin Dynasty's Confucianism World Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Sword Saint Chao Qiudao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Sword Saint Chao Qiudao. The ornamental trees planted in the courtyard are low and scattered, with black pine and green bamboo intertwined. The bamboo shadows sway, and the moss spreads, creating a mottled and scattered atmosphere. This courtyard seems to have absorbed all the heaven and earth into it, with countless layers of sky. The long corridor and winding path are deep, the small bridge flows, and the rockery is rugged. A young child dressed in a blue long shirt stood with his hands on his back, looking into the distance with a look of lost interest. People are quiet, people are sparse, the wind moves a courtyard of flower shadows. He was not originally from this world, but unexpectedly, he revived his life and came to the pre-Qin period. However, this life seems different from the world he knows. A good year, although it doesn't rhyme, it still has some flavor. Suddenly, a voice came and the young child looked up, unaware that a man in white was already beside him. Wearing white clothes and black hair, with a nose groove like an eagle, deeply sunken eyes, and crystal clear skin like snow, the figure is tall, thin, and slender. What is unforgettable is his imposing demeanor that overlooks the world, as well as his sword-wielding hands. His appearance immediately overshadowed the entire courtyard, as if everything in the world was captured by his sharpness. I don't know who you are, sir. The young boy remained calm. You don't know me, but I know your name is Longyang, said the man in white. Are you looking for my father? I can lead you there, Longyang asked after a moment's thought. Exactly, take me to find your father, said the man in white. Longyang knew that he had an extraordinary background and dared not neglect him, so he led him towards the mansion. Father. Longyang knocked lightly on the door and called out. What's up? A gentle yet majestic voice came from the room. Longyang respectfully replied, a guest has arrived. Before he could answer, the man in white had pushed the door and entered the room. I saw the person in the room wearing a green shirt, with a clear and elegant face, sitting upright in front of the desk, holding a book of green slips. It has been a long time since I parted ways at the Jixia Academy in the year of Emperor Jing. Longyang put down his hand and stood up to welcome the man in white. I came to see you this time just to reminisce about the past, said the man in white. Nyener, please leave first, LV Fu instructed. No, Longyang replied, closing the door and retreating. He has quite your demeanor. I think he has good bones and is good at learning swordsmanship. Would you like me to teach him, said the man in white. Being able to win your favor is his blessing, and I am willing to do so, Longyang said, with a slight hesitation in his tone. But I have already found a sect for him, and I will send him there in a while. You are so eager to arrange for him, but that ominous thing has already targeted you, said the man in white. Upon hearing this, Longyang's heart trembled and he said with a serious tone, they are invincible. If they have the intention, there is nothing in this world that can hide them. I know there is a secret about you, which is why they are looking for you, the man in white said. If they come, 1 person will kill them, 10 people will kill them, 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, I will kill them all. I will take care of you. In his words, he exuded an aura of dominating the world, with people like swords, swords like rainbows, and his momentum like breaking bamboo. They may not be worth mentioning to you, but this matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface, and the connection between them is difficult to explain. I don't want to implicate you, I have my own plans, Lvejin said. The man in white was not angry. He knew his personality, and if he had made a decision, no one could change it. So he said, although that's the case, I will stay in your mansion for the time being. That's good, Louis said briefly. It is said that he is coming back, Lvejin changed the topic. Most likely he will pass through Dongjun. You don't want to see him, said the man in white. Since he has returned, why should I go see him? Lvejin smiled. The man in white didn't ask much before saying, Dongjun controls the 5 states with one place, bordering Zhao and Yan to the north and Chu to the south. To the east is Qilu, so if he were to enter Wei, he would naturally choose this place. Moreover, he has some reservations in his heart. Dongjun has always been the base of the peasant family, and he has a deep friendship with them. Lvejin knew his intentions. The peasant family had always been anti-Qin. Although he had been ordered by the king to return to his home country, his future was uncertain. Taking advantage of the power of the peasant family, he could avoid trouble for him. Since more than a year ago, General Meng Ao of the state of Qin has led his army to attack and occupy Gaodu and Jicheng. The Wei army has suffered repeated defeats and is powerless to resist. Only he can regroup, fight against the Qin army, and regain control of the country. Lve briefly said. What he did not say was the rise and fall of a country. Relying on one person will ultimately make it difficult to stand alone. The man in white appeared slightly silent, and he thought to himself, the world has been in turmoil for a long time, with continuous campaigns. The situation of the 7 kingdoms coexisting will eventually be shattered, and perhaps the world will be unified by Qin. Lvejin sighed and said, just stop fighting and abandon martial arts, rest with the people, and in the end, it will only be like the moon in the water and the flower in the mirror. Although the man in white agreed with his words, he said, there's no need to worry. Just do what you need to do well. As for the fate of the world, it's not up to you and me. Lvejin did not refute. He knew he was telling the truth, but the martial arts world was never involved in this dispute. This chaotic world is just a prelude. They are just a flat boat under this fission, and even a slight mistake can capsize and sink. Young master, the food is ready, said a servant. Passing through the corridor, we arrived at the small courtyard. As soon as we entered the room, the dishes were already arranged on the table, along with various utensils. The banquet took up an area of square feet. A servant girl holds a copper spoon filled with clean water, and a servant girl holds a copper plate filled with pan. In fact, it is rice washing water. Rice belongs to the essence of vegetation, and rice washing water has good decontamination ability. After Lun cleared his hands, he sat down. At this time, although the dishes were not as rich as those of later generations, they were still considered exquisite. Qiudao, Paogu, Zhazhen, Peizang, Zhazhen, Zhe, Shao, Gandang, and the meat porridge in the cooking cauldron can be described as fine food. Lvejin picked up a piece of stewed slices and put it in his mouth. It melted right into his mouth, making it delicious, smooth, and tender. The maid on the side scooped a spoonful of zhejiang from the ice mirror and put it into the copper ju. Lvejin took a sip and tasted a sweet aroma. Lvejin likes zhejiang very much. In fact, it is a drink made from sugar cane juice, which is usually used to sober up after drinking. Young master, do you still fit in? The maid asked. I am very satisfied, Lvejin said. There are many dishes, it's a pity to discard them. You can share a share. Lvejin comes from later generations and has never regarded these servants as inferior or harsh. He has always been approachable and has a good relationship with them. After finishing lunch, Lv rested in the courtyard. Suddenly, he heard footsteps coming from far to near. Soon, a figure appeared outside the courtyard door, which was the man in white. "I don't know what you're looking for, sir," Lv said. "Your father asked me to teach you swordsmanship. Starting today, before morning classes and in the afternoon, you will practice swordsmanship with me," said the man in white. During the pre-Qin period, the trend of practicing swordsmanship, fighting swords, and wearing swords was very popular. He had already learned basic swordsmanship from his master before. In this world that is similar to ancient times, there exists martial arts. He saw this person yesterday and felt that he must be the martial arts master. Now that he can be taught by him personally, he is very happy in his heart. No one has a martial arts dream in their heart, so they wield their swords and walk the world. Student Lv pays respects to the teacher. "Do you know the teacher's name and taboo?" Lv said in a teacher's salute. The book goes, "To live is to cultivate with care, and to die is to offer sacrifices." This is the way of respecting teachers. The ancients sat on the ground and revered the West, so they respectfully referred to the private tutor as the West seat and the guest of honor. "You are actually someone who knows etiquette. My name is Qiudao. Today, I will teach you a few moves to avoid being bullied in the future," said the man in white. He took out his sword and handed it to Lv. This is a simple and unadorned bronze sword, with a scabbard made of mahogany and a body without any decorative patterns. The sword is smooth throughout and emits a faint cold light. Lv took the bronze sword, which had a simple and heavy body with a calm feeling. The spine of the sword was full of sharpness, as if once the sword was drawn, it could be chopped down into the Milky Way. Swords also have thoughts. The man in white seemed to sense what he was thinking in his heart. "You haven't entered the swordsmanship yet, but you can feel the meaning of my sword. I just have occasional feelings and dare not speak recklessly," Lv said humbly. "I hope you can teach me." Swordsmanship has two levels of realm, one is sword style, and the other is Italian style. Sword style is the foundation. It uses intention to attract qi, qi to attract spirit, intention to attract heart, heart to attract qi, and qi to attract qi is sword. Qiudao said, "As for the concept of artistic conception, if you're still far behind, let's not express it for now. Now, I will teach a sword technique. Flying flowers chasing leaves. I will only perform it once, please remember." Qiudao had the intention to test Lv intelligence, and this swordsmanship practice should also be taught according to his aptitude. He casually broke a branch, as if there was nothing in his hand that could not be used as a sword. In an instant, flying leaves flew off the tree like raindrops, shattering from the center and drifting in the air. As the flying leaves fell, Qiudao casually discarded the branches and said calmly, "This is the fast sword technique, which emphasizes speed, accuracy, stability, and ruthlessness. As long as you can understand it, you can enter the sword technique category." "The swordsmanship of the master is already exquisite," Lv exclaimed. This was the first time he had seen such a miraculous scene, and his heart couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. "How much do you understand?" Qiudao asked, knowing whether Lv understood swordsmanship. "I seem to have seen some tricks, but I know it's difficult for me to use them," replied Lv. "You don't have the inner strength and true qi to guide it at this moment, so naturally you can't do it." Qiudao didn't doubt his words. "You don't have to worry, I will teach you." Mr. Xie doesn't blame his disciples for being foolish, Lv bowed and said. "The most important aspect of practicing swordsmanship is the foundation, not impatience, but gradual progress." Qiudao also said, "Its usage is not limited to stabbing, splitting, hanging, pointing, breaking, cloud, wiping, piercing, pressing, etc. Based on this, it is combined with sword fingers and various movements such as steps, patterns, jumps, balance, and rotation to form swordsmanship. From today on, you will start practicing swordsmanship according to what I have taught you. Yes, sir, Lv replied. Qiudao then demonstrated again, only to see him stab forward with a flat sword, reaching the tip of the sword with force, forming a line between the sword and the arm. Then, the sword body curved in mid-air and quickly returned to its original position without leaving any trace. Lv studied very seriously and meticulously, occasionally raising his own doubts, and Qiudao could provide answers. Qiudao was even more delighted to see Lv so serious and mature in his youth. After Lv finished practicing, he said, "I'll be here today. You go and rest." "Thank you very much, sir," Lv said. Lu saw that it was getting late and said, "Sir, would you like to have dinner with me? If there is anything delicious, I can instruct the kitchen to prepare it." "No need," Qiudao refused. "I still have something to do, so I'll say goodbye first." Night is quiet, with only the bright moonlight. The copper lamps flickered in the room, reflecting a delicate and innocent face. Lv sat in front of the desk with a book in his hand. However, there was no paper at this time, and most of the books were made of bamboo slips and wooden boxes, which was very inconvenient. "Nyener, you are also diligent, but being a father saves a lot of trouble." A voice suddenly sounded. "Daddy." Lv looked back, his father had already arrived by his side at some point. "Because I learned swordsmanship from my teacher in the afternoon, I missed my homework and am currently reviewing you," Lv replied. "Teach the spring and autumn annals to promote good and suppress evil, to advise their hearts with caution, teach the world to demonstrate virtue and eliminate darkness and confusion, to avoid fear of its movements, teach the poetry, to guide the broad display of virtue, to illuminate their aspirations, teach the etiquette to understand the principles of the upper and lower levels, teach the joy of teaching, to dispel its impurities and suppress its floating, teach the language, to clarify its virtues, and to know the affairs of the former king, to use virtue to the people, teach the guji, to make those who know the decline and rise wary of it." Lv Fu said, "You are both wise. Reading is more about understanding righteousness and integrating knowledge in action. Children save money," Lv said. "All right, take a break earlier and don't work too hard, otherwise your body and bones won't be able to withstand it," said Father Lv. Lv agreed with a promise and watched his father leave. His figure remained as tall as a pine tree, and his temperament did not change much, faintly showing his youthful heroism. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. First Acquaintance with Lord Xinling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. First Acquaintance with Lord Xinling. Young Master, I have arrived late. With the sound of a ring pendant, a stunning woman approached step by step. She was dressed in a light purple dress, perfectly outlining her delicate curves. Her watery eyes sparkled with a gentle and watery radiance. "It's okay, I always have enough patience for beauties." The man chuckled lightly and involuntarily wrapped his hand around the graceful woman's waist. The beauty immediately leaned against the man's embrace. The man lowered his head and looked at the beautiful woman in his arms. Every frown and smile carried an endless charm, even more enchanting than Daji and even more charming than Zhao Ji. "During my time in the state of Zhao, I haven't seen you for a long time, and I can't help but think of the time we spent together in Yahuxiaozhu." The man spoke softly, with a hint of indulgence in his tone. "Yan Ran, you have to teach me how to handle Brother Wang's invitation." With the young master's intelligence, Yan Ran is afraid that it will be difficult to match the young master by 3 points. Yan Ran smiled coquettishly with a gentle and pleasant voice. She turned her head slightly and looked at the man beside her. If there were 2 people's support in the court of Wei now, it would be nothing. The man's expression did not change much upon hearing this, but there was already a hint of freehand expression between his eyebrows. "Who are these 2 people?" "Grand Minister Wei Yong, Lord Longyang," Yan Ran replied softly. "I have heard that Wei Yong, the Grand Minister of Works, has always been in charge of the country. If he were truly devoted to serving the Great Way, he would definitely support the young master in the current crisis of the Great Way. Ji Yanran continued, as for Lord Longyang, it is said that his swordsmanship is the best in the state of Wei. As a swordsman, he naturally loves swordsmanship. If you can find a sword to give to him, how can he not blow the pillow breeze to the king for you? It's not difficult, but I still need to stay in Dongjun for some more time, the man said lightly. I wonder if Yanran would like you to be with me. Young master's invitation, how dare Yanran refuse? Ji Yanran raised her eyes slightly, seductive as silk, and said coquettishly. The man chuckled lightly and immediately hugged the beautiful woman in his arms, gently stroking her hair. The smooth touch made the man feel intoxicated. Young master, if someone asks to see you and holds your token, it is said that you have been invited by the young master to meet you. Outside, the voice of a guard interrupted their charm. The man frowned and then released his right arm, which was wrapped around the beautiful woman's waist. He stood up and accurately went to catch the wind. Let them come in. No. The guard stepped down, and in no time, a middle-aged man in splendid attire walked in. He has a fair face and a handsome and graceful expression, with an elegant expression in every gesture and gesture, demonstrating good manners. Afterwards, there was another person with bright and lively eyes, a beard, rough skin, and a braid behind the head. Dressed in plain clothes, dressed in coarse cloth. Lord Xinling immediately welcomed Ji Yanran with him. I have seen Lord Xinling, and I am grateful to you all. And Ling Jun bowed and said. He has known Lord Xinling for a long time. Ji Yanran, as a famous talented woman in the state of Wei, was an unparalleled beauty with both literary and military abilities. Many of the nobles in the state of Wei did not recognize her. A certain Tian Guang is just a wandering hero and a crude person. When I first met Lord Xinling, my courtesy was not appropriate. I hope that Lord Xinling will not be blamed, the bold man said, clasping his fists. The 9 starry grasses on his shoulder, representing the leader of the rural family, actually revealed his identity. Lord Xinling thought to himself that this person must be the new leader of the farming family. No problem, it's an honor for both of you to have a talk here. What's wrong? Lord Xinling waved his hand gently and spoke with great grace, looking at the man with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. Both of you, please come in, I'll prepare the food and drink for everyone. Haha, then you're welcome. The man laughed loudly, but in his heart, he said that it was rumored that Wei Wuji, the lord of Xinling, treated the virtuous and virtuous soldiers equally. Seeing it today, what he said was not false. LV Nian has been practicing swordsmanship with Qiudao for 10 months, but during this period, his progress has been extremely fast. Qiudao also highly values him in this regard, and the more he looks at LV Nian, the more satisfied Qiudao becomes. Nianer, I'm going to meet someone. In the afternoon class, you can practice on your own. When I come back, I'll teach you some moves. Qiudao stood up with his sword and said softly. Yes, sir, LV Nian respectfully agreed. Qiudao turned and said, maybe you want to go with me. Upon hearing this, LV Nian was quite tempted and said, does this not hinder, sir? It doesn't matter, Qiudao chuckled lightly, understanding in his heart that his disciple wanted to go with him. Passing through the hall door, you can see a bright view. There are carved beams and painted rafters, precious flowers and grasses everywhere. There is also a winding stream under the corridor, which flows from the depths of flowers and trees into a pool surrounded by strange stones. The flowers and trees are sparse, and the winding path leads to seclusion. Along the way, I wound around the trees and pierced through the flowers. After passing through a rose stand, I finally arrived at the sandalwood plum tree. Immediately, a fragrant fragrance rushed towards me. Suddenly, I heard the melody of the Qin, melodious and graceful, like the sound of orioles chirping green. Another person played the zither and sang it in harmony, bright and beautiful, like the flowing water of a mountain stream. The clusters of deep yellow petals and purple flower hearts are blooming on the branches, and there is a man and a woman in the pavilion. The man, dressed in white clothes, was victorious in snow. His long hair was tied up with a jade hairpin, and he looked like a graceful and virtuous young master. The woman wore a blue-colored luo shirt, with a beautiful appearance, a pair of beautiful eyes shining with hope, red lips and white teeth, and shy eyebrows and eyes. Lu Nian couldn't help but say, "The book says, I have a guest who plays the zither and guqin. This piece is called Magpie Nest. Another sound of the qin sounded, and the qin and the se joined together, like spring rain falling, lasting for a long time before it finally stopped. Mr. Xiao is quite knowledgeable, Ji Yanran said in a soft and pleasant voice, with a smile on her face. Miss, I'm just a little knowledgeable, not worth mentioning, said LV Nian humbly. The man looked at LV Nian and said, since ancient times, heroes have produced young talents. You are just a young talent. Turning his gaze to Qiudao again, I wonder what is the relationship between this young gentleman and Zi. Qiudao said, but he is my nephew, named Nian. I see, this piece of music is played for guests. Please take a seat, the man said. The three of them sat down, and Ji Yanran poured wine for them. She smiled at LV Nian and said, I didn't know that Mr. Xiao would come earlier. You are too young to drink alcohol, so I will have my maid prepare some water for you. Please wait a moment. It's okay, I begged my uncle to come, but it's a helpful girl, LV Nian replied. Upon hearing this, Ji Yanran's attitude towards this child became even more intimate. Lord Xinling and Master Ji are quite elegant. Chao is just a swordsman and doesn't understand these things. If he doesn't have any thoughts, he doesn't know all the reasons behind it. Qiudao held his wine glass and lightly took a sip before sighing. LV Nian was waiting on the side, hearing that the handsome man in front of him was the legendary figure of Xinling Jun, one of the famous four sons of the Warring States period in later generations. I couldn't help but feel surprised in my heart. I didn't expect to see such a person, and my heart was filled with admiration. Ji Yanran noticed a change in his expression and couldn't help but ask, does Mr. Xiao seem to have something on his mind? I never expected that the young master would be the Lord Xinling, who passed down the 6 kingdoms. Seeing him today really surprised me, said LV Nian. It's just an empty name. It's worth a compliment from the young gentleman, the handsome man said with a faint smile. The 4 rulers of the Warring States period were all known as good scholars, but the excellence of Xinling came from the center, which was attributed to its innate benevolence and intelligence. Wisdom leads to the ability to know and employ people, while benevolence leads to the treatment of the wise. There is a genuine desire that cannot be fully appreciated, which can be compared to those who are not forced to embellish themselves. Therefore, this wise person is happy to be useful. Yu Sanjun, Meng tasted but the ears of the private camp, the ears of the plain bandits' boldness. Huang Xiaoyu was insignificant, all kinds of good scholars regarded themselves, while Xinling regarded good scholars as the country. Mr. Xiao is good at speaking, but when you first met the young master, you were more like a confidant. With your talent, adding a small character in front of you would be a disgrace to Mr. Yan. Yan Ran apologized to you, Mr. Yan Ran, with a hint of apology in her eyes. He picked up the wine and said to LV Nian, drinking it all in one gulp. Although we first met, Mr. Xiao and I became friends at first sight. How can we be called friends in the future, said Wei Wuji, the Lord of Xinling, with a sincere expression in his words. LV Nian hurriedly said, it's my honor to be favored by Lord Xinling. Qiudao was originally just a last-minute instigation. Unexpectedly, he fell in love with Lord Xinling at first sight. While the 3 of them were chatting and laughing, the guests and hosts were enjoying each other, and the wine was drunk and the ears were hot. Recently, I heard that Qiao Zi intends to compete swords with Zhao Jianzhai at Sunset Peak, said Lord Xinling. Exactly. Cao Qiu said concisely. It's rare to see the two great masters of the world compete in skills, but it's also rare. Then I and Yanran will go and watch the battle, said Lord Xinling. It would be great if you two could come, Qiudao said. After the two of them left, Lord Xinling said to Ji Yanran, what do you think of this person? Ji Yanran pondered for a moment before slowly saying, he has a resilient mind and a calm personality, but he is extremely proud. He regards heroes in the world as nothing and is afraid of being used by the young master. There's no need to force this matter, but that child is quite admirable to me, said Lord Xinling. Since the young master is so optimistic about that child, Yanran is willing to help him. If that child can enter the young master's family, it will be a wonderful thing, and he can also serve our Wei country in the future. Ji Yanran said. Although Qiudao claimed to be his nephew, I think it's a lie. Like a young master, I really like him, Ji Yanran said. Young master, do you want my concubine to investigate his origin? Ji Yanran asked. No need, he doesn't want to express himself. He has his own difficulties. When I make friends with him, I treat him as my friend. If we make friends, how can we not believe it, said Lord Xinling. Yanran understood now. This behind-the-scenes conversation was something that Elvin Yen was unaware of. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Sunset Peak Sword Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Sunset Peak Sword Battle. The sky was very dark, with ink clouds rolling over it, as if the entire land had been dyed with a layer of black and gray. Birds fluttered their wings in fear, circling in mid-air. Lightning bolts sliced through the pitch-black sky, illuminating both the sky and the earth, making the entire land even darker. The mountains in the valley are steep, deep and beautiful, with pine trees covering the walls, clear springs and caves, and winding paths. White clouds fly vertically, and strange rocks are rugged. Under the changing weather, the mountains and forests appear even more desolate, adding a touch of desolation and solemnity. On the sunset peak, Zhaojian Studio stands on the top of a high mountain, gazing into the distance. A gust of west wind blew, curling up a few strands of green silk and brushing around my clothes. He devoted his whole life to swordsmanship and never showed any slackness. After 30 years of hard practice in swordsmanship, he eventually became a renowned swordsman and became famous all over the world. He boasted of unparalleled swordsmanship, and only after the First World War with that person 10 years ago did he realize that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. The unbeatable sense of defeat shattered his pride in the depths of his heart. A man dressed in black and a headband stood next to the Zhaojian Studio. His hand tightly grasped the hilt of the sword, his face was sharp and angular, his facial features were cold and hard, and his eyes were sharp like eagles and falcons. This person is actually Guan Zhongxie, a disciple of the Zhaojian Studio. Not long after, a figure slowly walked from the foot of the mountain, steady and steady, calm and steady. His demeanor is extraordinary, introverted and composed. Young generation Xiaoyao Lang pays his respects to senior Zhao Jianzhai. The person arched his hand and saluted. Unexpectedly, today's sword competition, the great hero of Guanzhong, Xiaoyao Lang, came from afar to watch the sword. It's a pleasure to meet you. Zhao Jianzhai said with a faint smile, overlooking the mountains in the distance from the negative hand cliff. Xiaoyao Lang replied, the two great masters of swordsmanship in the world compete in swordsmanship. How dare I miss it? At this moment, a burst of wild laughter came. Ha ha ha. Sword old man, he was defeated with one sword back then, but now his martial arts have improved. A burly and majestic man walked towards him. The person was wearing a large white robe with intricate patterns embroidered with gold thread at the hem. A black iron whip was tied around the waist, and a pair of tiger eyes shimmered with fierce light. Guan Zhongxie saw this person insulting his teacher and was extremely angry. He wanted to take action, but was secretly stopped by Zhao Jianzhai. Indulging in indulgence, indulging in rampant breeding, and engaging in animal and poultry activities, it is not enough to achieve comprehensive governance. However, his reasoning is justified and his words are reasonable enough to deceive fools. It is it that arrogates to Wei Muya. This person believes that humans are originally beasts, and when we release our nature and return to the wild, beasts are the ones who understand the way of heaven and earth. Therefore, if humans want to return to nature and become one with heaven and earth, they must indulge in their own desires, eat the weak, and have no scruples. It is rumored that they usually hide in the mountains and forests, threatening the captured men and women to engage in production and provide them with sexual activities. Xiao Weimo is highly skilled in martial arts, capable of fighting lions with bare hands, giving birth to split tigers and leopards. He has an extraordinary sexual desire and cannot sleep peacefully if he does not resist 10 women at night. If it weren't for the human rights behind it leaning against the state and the people, and hiding in the mountains and forests, such an extremely heinous person would have been executed long ago. Xiao Lang has always harbored a grudge against evil. He had long heard of his unruly animal behavior, but when he encountered him today, he was even more indignant. He spoke sarcastically and said, "Such an animal should not be human. I am here to kill you, this evil beast, so that I can eliminate harm to the world." Xiao Weimo laughed back angrily and said, "Your grandfather and I are already ferocious beasts in the mountains. I have ruled the world for more than 30 years, how could you, as a young calf, be able to kill me?" As soon as the words fell, his figure surged and he leaped to the side of Xiao Lang. With his right hand clenching his fist, he fiercely smashed it into the chest of Xiao Weimo, with a cold fist wind. Obviously, the power of this punch should not be underestimated. Xiao Lang let out a cold snort, pointed it out, and a strong energy shot directly at Xiao Weimo's chest. Xiao Weimo's figure retreated slightly, his left hand clenched his fist to face him, his palms intersecting, and both of them trembled slightly. Xiao Weimo's eyebrows furrowed slightly, and a strange expression flashed in his eyes. This person was quite tricky. Xiao Lang drew his sword in his hand, and with a twist of the blade, another sword burst out. Xiao Weimo snorted coldly, stomped on the stone with both feet, and with the help of a huge counterforce, stood up from the ground, avoiding the attacking sword gang. Immediately, a fierce whip leg swept towards Xiao Lang, and the leg wind howled, rolling up dust in the sky with a terrifying aura. Once hit, even the steel and iron bones would break. Xiao Lang remained calm and composed, with a change in his sword form that instantly transformed into 6 sword shadows. The 6 swords were one in front and one behind, one on the left and one on the right, attacking and defending, while also piercing towards Xiao Weimo. Xiao Weimo was surprised to see that Xiao Lang was using such a mysterious sword technique. However, he had been in the martial arts world for many years and had a wide range of knowledge, so he was naturally not afraid. He only saw him stepping on the void, holding an iron whip, and swinging his hand towards the 6 sword shadows. The whip's tail struck on top of the 6 sword shadows, and only 3 explosions were heard, causing all 6 sword shadows to explode. "Humph! Do you dare to show off your small skills like carving insects?" Xiao Weimo sneered and waved his iron whip at Xiao Lang. Xiao Lang remained calm and composed, his body gently drifting past, taking a few steps back to avoid the whip tail. Then, his sword pointed diagonally towards the front, and a sword energy burst out from his sword tip, facing the whip shadow of Xiao Weimo. The whip shadow collided with the sword energy, and suddenly exploded, scattering the waves of energy. Zhao Jianzhai saw that the two had already engaged in a real battle, and it was inevitable that they would both be injured in the fight. He quickly spoke up to stop them and said, "Stop it. Today, I will compete with Qiudao in the sword competition. Can we sell some thin noodles?" Xiao Weimo snorted coldly, put away his whip, and coldly glanced at Xiao Lang, saying, "Okay, I'll spare you once today. If you dare to offend me again, you will take your dog's life." Upon hearing this, Xiao Lang was extremely angry and wanted to take another action, but he saw a noble young master gracefully arrive. I heard that the great hero of Guanzhong, Xiaoyaolang, has always spoken with righteousness and courage. Today, I saw that it was indeed true. However, today the sword master compared swords with the sword Saint Chao Qiudao in the sword studio, but it was not easy to hurt the harmony. Afterwards, why not join you in killing this fawn? Such evil thieves are just bones in the grave. The noble young master looked confident, as if Wei Mao was already dead. Humph. Others are afraid of your identity as the Duke of Wei, but I am not afraid, said Xiao Wei Mao angrily. What if we add others? Only a soft female voice could be heard. Everyone followed the sound and saw a beautiful woman dressed in purple, with a graceful figure, skin more than snow, eyebrows like willow leaves, and eyes like stars walking gracefully in lotus steps. Afterwards, there was a group of farmers led by Tian Guan. Ha ha ha, deceiving others with more is not a hero. Xiao Wei Mao shouted loudly. Tian Guang said coldly, you're not as good as a beast. How can you be called a hero? It's an insult to the word hero. Today, I have had a fight with you to see who lives and who dies. Xiao Weimo knew in his heart that if he faced anyone on the field alone, he wouldn't dare to say he could win steadily. If everyone joined forces, he would definitely die. He just said stubbornly, okay, I want to see what kind of strength you have. If it weren't for today's old man selling swords to save face, even if we all worked together, what would be the fear? I'll go. After speaking, he leaped up and headed straight down the mountain. The sky became increasingly gloomy, with dark clouds rolling and gusts of strong winds. The long accumulated rainwater finally poured down, like a waterfall cascading down like a silver pillar, splashing countless water droplets. A desolate and solemn aura suddenly rose, and a figure appeared first, dressed in white and with black hair, aloof and cold, exuding a domineering aura that looked down upon the world. Beside him was a child who followed him step by step. Before the raindrops could approach, they were melted by the internal energy circulating outside their bodies, and there were no traces of wet rain on the child's body. LV Nianji knew that it was Chao Qiudao who had specially chosen him, and his heart was filled with warmth. On the other hand, he was amazed by this scene. Chao Zi still needs to compare swords with Senior Zhao Jianzhai. Sir, you can come to the young lady's place, Ji Yanran said to LV Nian, holding up an oilcloth umbrella. The comparison sword is over, I have come to find you. Chao Qiudao sent it to Ji Yanran's side. Ji Yanran nodded slightly at her, indicating that she would take care of LV Nian. Chao Qiudao arrived in front of Zhao Jianzhai and the two of them confronted each other across the air, creating an oppressive atmosphere around them. Everyone unconsciously stepped back to make room for the two of them. 10 years from now, don't let me down too much. Chao Qiudao said indifferently. His momentum is growing stronger and stronger, like the sword of Ling Tian, showing its sharpness. The celestial phenomena also change in color, with thunder and lightning intertwined, as if splitting the heavens and the earth. Zhao Jianzhai's face was solemn, and he sighed inwardly. This person was indeed a demon-level figure, and now I don't know where he has gone. Zhao Jianzhai pulled out his long sword, but his grip was missing a finger. The sword is named Lotus and has a noble and pure nature. It is free from dust and does not stain. On the sword body, the sword lines are free and seem to have spirituality. As soon as this sword is wielded, the sound of its roar suddenly resounds, causing the heavens and earth to shake. With a flash of sword light, it transformed into thousands of sword shadows, slashing towards Chao Qiudao from all directions like raindrops. The sword shadows were like a tide, layer after layer. Chao Qiudao remained unmoved, his figure as still as a mountain, but the aura around his body grew stronger and the sword intent became pure, as if it was about to erupt and eliminate the sword shadows invisibly. Boom boom. The thunder and lightning roared in the sky, rolling like a giant dragon, as if about to descend from the sky. When everyone saw this, they were horrified in their hearts. The sword's intent matched with that of heaven and earth, and the power of heaven and earth was utilized. Zhao Jinzhai's face became solemn, and the lotus sword suddenly struck. The sword's energy surged on the body, and waves of sword energy seemed to tilt towards the sky, cutting through the sky and slashing towards Qiudao with the force of tearing up the sky. Qiudao drew his sword, and with just one sword, a shining sword light passed by, shattering all the countless sword shadows. With just a scream, Zhao Jinzhai's left arm, which was holding the sword, snapped in response, and blood gushed out like a spring, filling the air. Qiudao sheathed his sword and stood with it, like a deity, the god within the sword. Zhao Jinzhai covered his severed arm, blood gushing out continuously. His face was already pale, but he stubbornly gritted his teeth, seemingly unwilling to make a sound. Upon seeing the situation, Guan Zhongxie and Xiao Yaolang immediately stepped forward and helped Zhao Jinzhai stop bleeding and heal his injuries. Tian Guang looked at Qiudao, with a hint of awe flickering in his eyes. Qiudao ignored Zhao Jinzhai and walked towards Lv Nian. Qiao Zijian is one of the unparalleled swordsmanship techniques in the world. The young woman asked herself how skilled she is in swordsmanship, and upon seeing her today, she truly deserves to be a great master. Ji Yanran said. If a person wants to be born, and a sword also wants to be born, then this sword will not be let down. Ji Yanran's topic changed. Now the 6 countries are in danger, and the situation of the tyrannical Qin is great. She wants to annex all the countries. I earnestly request Qiao Zi to help us with our efforts to eliminate the tyrannical Qin and protect the world. Whether it's 7 countries or 1 country, what does this have to do with me? Qiudao said coldly. Ji Yanran frowned slightly and said, what does Qiao Zi mean? Do you not know that you are originally from Qi? If the 5 kingdoms are destroyed, how can Qi survive alone? Back then, the leader of the rural family asked you to take action to kill 2 Baiqi, but you never promised, and now you also refuse. Qiao Zi is afraid of that ruthless and cruel Qin. Don't provoke me. If I don't want to do something, no one in this world can force me to do it. Qiao Qiu said coldly. If I want to do something, no one in the world can stop it. Even if I want to kill the kings of the 7 countries, I can only kill them with 1 sword. After speaking, he swung out his sword and instantly reached Ji Yanran. The crowd in the field was all in shock, and no one could stop them. A generation of beautiful women was afraid that they would disappear like jade. Sir, be merciful under the sword. A childish voice sounded, and it was Lv Nian. The unparalleled sword changed its momentum and was sheathed. However, Ji Yanran's 3,000 green threads were all cut off, revealing her smooth and jade-like scalp. If it weren't for Nian's plea, I would have taken your life. I would have cut off my hair as a punishment, Qiudao said coldly, carrying Lv Nian down the mountain. Yanran, why do you need to be like this? Lord Xinling looked at Ji Yanran's pitiful expression and felt a touch of pity in his heart, with a hint of anger in his words. If something happens to you, how can this be done? Young master, since Yanran dares to do so, she is confident. I know he won't kill me, Ji Yanran whispered. Moreover, with Mr. Chao Nian present, he will speak up to protect me. If the young master truly sympathizes with Yanran, don't despise her for having no green hair left now, Ji Yanran said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Lord Xinling was taken aback and said tenderly, how could Yanran think so? I love you so much. The battle between the 2 great masters of swordsmanship in the world has finally come to an end. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The Emergence of the Trap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The emergence of the trap. As the saying goes, before dawn, under the service of the maid Xiaoyao, Lv Nian stood up to tidy up and prepare for morning classes. Qiudao wanted him to lay a good foundation of swordsmanship first. Seeing that he was diligent, he taught him a set of internal mental skills in addition to practicing swordsmanship in the afternoon every day. He specifically told his servants to prepare daily tonic diet for him according to the prescriptions he wrote, and every day after meditation, he should take medicine bath to cleanse himself, supplemented by pills to eat, and practice both inside and outside. As a foundation for Lv, this mental technique requires him to spend 1 hour each morning and evening meditating and regulating his breath, condensing his internal energy into the elixir field, and then gradually refining it to make his internal energy more pure and strengthen his internal foundation. Since the first time he used his mind technique, he only felt the heat flow rolling in his body, forming warm streams at the dantian and condensing on top of it. Then, with his guidance, he slowly spread towards his limbs and bones, gradually spreading throughout his body. As the heat flowed towards the purple mansion, it slowly disappeared like clear water flowing into the river without a trace. Instantly, my whole body relaxed, as if it had been watered by a clear spring. In order to understand the method of internal energy meridians and internal scenery, Lv specifically sought his father to find 2 volumes of medical books, Su Wen and Ling Shu, to study medical theory. In his view, internal energy initially entered the perineum and Changjiang acupoints from the dantian, each belonging to the Ren and Du meridians. Afterwards, the Ren meridian ascended along the curved bones, Guanyuan, Qihai, Shenkei, Shewan, Zhongwan, Juk, Zhongting, Yutang, Huagai, and Tiantu all the way to meet at Baihui acupoint. The Du meridian rises along the spine from the acupoints of Yaoyu, Yangguan, Mingmen, and Xianshu, all of which follow the important acupoints of Du Ren on the back, followed by the acupoints of Jizhong, Zhongzhong, Jinshou, Jiyang, Lingtai, Shendao, Shazhu, Taodao, Dazhui, Yamen, Fengfu, Naohu, Jiangjian, Haoding, and Baihui at the top gate. After the intersection of the 2 at the Baihui acupoint, the essence and spirit of the Zhou sky condense in the purple mansion, feeding back the 8 meridians and 12 normal meridians of the body. As mentioned in the book, in ancient times, he was innocent. After practicing internal skills, he, who was already sharp in divine consciousness, became even more sensitive in his 5 senses. Being able to hear sounds from far and near, seeing things like a mirror, observing details, hearing and seeing clearly, having clear 7 orifices and visible 6 consciousnesses. After finishing the morning class and taking the medicine bath, it was already the hour. When I arrived at the learning pavilion, there was already a teacher waiting for me to teach. Lv first bowed and said hello, and then sat in front of the desk to listen to the teacher's lecture on today's teaching content. During his leisure time, his father Lv would occasionally personally teach him how to write and pass on the 6 arts. And various important techniques such as Shu Shu, ancient secret texts such as Yin Fu Shu, He Tu, Luo Shu, Cangjie Shu, Xia Yu Shu, Lian Shan, Gui Cang, and Lu Zhuan need to be practiced. Nowadays, the 7 kingdoms of the world are in conflict, with numerous kingdoms and their respective scripts forming their own systems, each with its own spring and autumn period. Although the scripts of various countries originated from the same source, for hundreds of years, due to the lack of a unified standard between countries, writing habits varied. For example, some people wrote an extra stroke, while others wrote less, ultimately making the scripts of various countries appear disorganized and disconnected from each other. For Lv, his father Lv demanded that he be fluent in all 7 languages and proficient in all 7 official languages. Obviously, he placed his own standards on his head, and with the ancient secrets mentioned earlier, his academic performance is not insignificant. Perhaps due to his rebirth, his divine sense far exceeded that of ordinary people. The knowledge learned in his past life was presented in his mind like a palace of memories, and in this life, it is unforgettable and recited. Lv, with his unforgettable ability and extraordinary intelligence, didn't have much difficulty learning, it was just a bit cumbersome. In his view, the scripts of various countries can be roughly divided into 5 major factions: Qi, Yan, Jin, Chu, and Qin and Zhou. Due to the eastward migration of King Ping of Zhou, the former territory of western Zhou gradually became the property of Qin, allowing both Qin and eastern Zhou to inherit the writing system and culture of western Zhou. The true inheritor of the Zhou system is not the 6 kingdoms of Canto, but rather the state of Qin. In teaching, Lv often draws analogies, and his father is very satisfied with this precocious son, and he is becoming more and more strict with him. After finishing his daytime classes, Lv returned to the house, tidied up his appearance, and prepared to visit Lord Xinling. He has a good impression of the two of them. This trip is to compensate for the incident at Sunset Peak more than 10 days ago on behalf of his teacher. Upon arriving at the residence of Lord Xinling and receiving a notification from the servants, someone immediately led him towards the inner courtyard. Unexpectedly, Lord Xinling and Ji Yanran have come to greet each other. "Nian, if you don't come find me, I would want to visit your mansion," said Lord Xinling with a smile on his face. "Lord Xinling has raised me high, but I have not escaped from worldly affairs recently. Today, whenever I have free time, I come to visit Lord Xinling," Lv said humbly. "Wuji said earlier that you and I are already good friends, and we should be considered equal friends." "Just call me Wuji," said Lord Xinling. Lv saw that Lord Xinling's words were sincere and did not seem to be false, so he no longer insisted. "Sir, it's been a while since we last met, and you've grown quite a bit taller," Ji Yanran joked as they agreed. At this moment, Ji Yanran was wrapped in a silk scarf and dressed in black palace attire. Her figure was graceful, her eyebrows were like ink paintings, and her face was like peach petals, still incredibly beautiful. "Everyone is joking," Lv said with a slight understanding. Upon arriving in the courtyard, the three of them took their respective seats, and the maidservant on the side immediately offered pastries. Lv stood up and held the sheet music in a box in front of Lord Xinling with both hands, saying, "There was some conflict between Uncle Sunset Peak and Master Ji before. Today, I came to apologize to Master Ji for my uncle's mistake. This sheet music is a top-notch Qin piece that I found from an ancient book. I know the good pitch of the two, so I am offering it to Lord Xinling and Master Ji." Upon receiving it, Lord Xinling opened it up and exclaimed in surprise, "I never imagined that besides the high mountains and flowing water, there would be such Qin music in the world." Upon hearing this, Ji Yanran leaned forward to take a closer look, and her eyes couldn't help but brighten. "This Guanling San is truly wonderful." Ji Yanran praised, "I wonder who wrote it." Lv said, "I just stumbled upon it in ancient books, but I don't know who did it. This Qin piece is exactly the Guanling San played by Ji Kong before his execution." Lv was fond of ancient music in his past life, and he is most familiar with this piece. Knowing that the two of them had a preference for rhythm, they wrote a score based on the Lvz-pu, a popular 5-tone and 12-tone system. In ancient books, there were records of those who were born to know in ancient times. "Now that I have seen you, I believe it, but I have some doubts that this song was composed by you," said Lord Xinling. Lord Xinling praised me falsely. "This song was not composed by me, but I obtained it from an ancient book." Lv dared not accept this big hat and defended himself. In the backyard of Lv Mansion, amidst a lush bamboo forest, a man hides in the midst of it. His figure was burly, his muscles tense, and he looked extremely muscular, but at this moment his face was pale, his eye sockets sunken, and there was a hint of deathly grey in his eyes. The old woman, with a hunched waist and stumbling steps, passed by him with a shaky posture, as if the wind was about to fall. The two of them looked at each other and understood the meaning in each other's eyes. Outside the study of Lv Mansion, a servant said, "Lvz, this is the hua soup specially prepared by the kitchen for you." "Come on in," Lv said. The servant pushed the door in and placed the bowl in his hand on the table. "Lvz, please." The servant's eyes flickered, and the dagger with a cold light was already in his hand, stabbing towards Lv. In an instant, a human head rolled down to the ground, and blood flowed down from his head, splashing onto the ground, forming a pool of crimson blood that was shocking. Everything was far from over when four masked black-clothed men flew out of the darkness and headed towards Lvejian. Lvejian snorted coldly, waved his sleeve and robe, and an invisible aura surged out, instantly knocking the four black-clothed men flying, spitting blood from their mouths, and falling heavily to the ground, unconscious. The trap of heaven and earth is everywhere, but I underestimated it and came to my door so quickly, said Lvejian calmly. Why don't you two show up for a moment? A gloomy man and an old woman floated out of the darkness and said, My lord, he wants to invite you to come. I'm afraid I didn't have a choice, Lvejian said. The woman with a hunched figure actually took the initiative, only to see her body short. She had at least 30 hidden weapons on her back, shooting at Lvejian at the same time. The tips of each hidden weapon were shining with a faint light, obviously coated with strange poison, and all were fired by the powerful crossbow. Fast, sick, accurate, and poisonous, they were all unavoidable and flashing. Lvejian's body was lifted together, and the table in front of him were flipped open in mid-air, blocking the hidden weapons. At this moment, the gloomy man had already arrived and slapped Lvejian with his palm. A black venomous snake was wrapped around his right arm, and the snake opened its fangs and mouth, revealing its snow-white barb. Lvejian's left hand made a feint, and it brushed out as if playing the piano, calm and composed. Waving, tapping, pushing, holding, kneading, pinching, each stroke perfectly resolved the gloomy man's attack, making him unable to get close. The hunched woman was about to kill the general when she saw this, but a crimson bloodstain appeared on her neck. Her body stiffened and she stopped, her eyes wide open, her throat making a popping sound, and her body collapsed to the ground. In the next moment, the head of the gloomy man flew out from his neck, and a stream of blood sprayed out. After landing, it rolled out a few feet away, splashing fresh blood on the ground, forming a shocking blood stain. Do you have something to do? A cold voice sounded, and it was Qiudao. His sword seemed to have never been unsheathed, but it had already killed the two. I'm fine, Lvejian said, but this matter needs to be brought forward. Lvejian had a great conversation with the two of them, feeling very happy and reluctant to leave. However, he still needed to practice swordsmanship in the afternoon, so he had to say goodbye. He felt a bit disappointed because Lord Xinling and Ji Yanran were about to set off tomorrow to return to Daliang. Apart from his father, although Qiudao has only been with him for a few months, they are more like family members. But in his heart, Lord Xinling and Ji Yanran were the only two friends he had ever made. Lvejian stepped into the mansion but suddenly felt that the atmosphere in today's mansion was somewhat eerie, as if someone had come. He frowned and was about to ask, but heard the butler Tu Su come to him and say, Young master, he has instructed me that if you come back, you should go see him as soon as possible. Lvejian nodded and headed straight towards the study of LV mansion. Lvejian pushed the door open and entered, but there was a faint smell of blood. His heart suddenly shook, and an ominous feeling floated in his heart. Qiudao and his father Lvejian were both present inside the house, and their faces were both solemn. Dad, but what happened in the mansion? Lvejian asked. Lvejian glanced at Lvejian and said in a deep voice, Nyener, today may be the last time our father and son meet. Dad, what do you mean by this? Do you want to leave me? Lvejian was very anxious upon hearing this. Lvejian has never seen his mother before, and has been raised by his father since childhood. If there is no father-son relationship, it is definitely a lie. Lvejian sighed and said, Listen to me, being a father is also a last resort. From this moment on, you will no longer be Lvejian, nor my son. I have already entrusted an old friend, and he will come to find you. You can leave with Brother Qiao, and in the future, you should treat him as your adoptive father. I have taken a surname for you, called Fu, which means to hide your name in seclusion, also known as Zhefu Qian Yuan. From now on, you will become Fu Nian. If you have the ability to take on this matter in the future, then you will know the truth. On the contrary, as a father, I only hope you can live the rest of your life in peace and not get involved in these disputes. Lvejien said earnestly. Liu Nian knew that his father was a human being, and when he spoke so hard, there was no room for him to turn around. He only said, "My child knows, Daddy, please accept my child's respect." After he finished speaking, he knelt on both knees and kowtowed 9 heads. "Let's go," Qiudao said. Lvejien stood up and gave his father a last glance before leaving with Qiudao. Lvejien looked at the direction they were leaving and sighed. He also knew that this time they were leaving, it would be rare to see each other again, but he had to do so. Although he couldn't bear to sacrifice those few children, in order to protect Lvejien and escape the pursuit of the Yin-Yang family, he had to do so, following the strategy of Li Daitao. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Encountering Lord Xinling again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Encountering Lord Xinling again. It has been 2 days since they separated from their father Lvejien, during which Fu Nian and Qiudao traveled eastward together. The two of them arrived at a slightly dilapidated small town today. There are few pedestrians on the simple streets, and occasionally a few people pass by in a hurry. Qiudao saw that Lvejien was young and afraid that he would find it difficult to bear the hustle and bustle of the journey. He decided to take a break and rest for a while. Arriving at the only inn in the town, several cars and horses were parked on the roadside, and a person dressed in fancy clothes was getting off the car. Fu Nian recognized at a glance that the leader was Lord Xinling, and the beautiful woman beside him was Ji Yanran. When old friends met, Fu Nian felt quite excited in his heart. Qiudao never expected to meet Lord Xinling here, thinking to himself that perhaps this was fate. Then he led Fu Nian towards Lord Xinling and his group. Lord Xinling was also very surprised to see Qiudao and Fu Nian, and he did not expect to see them here. "Lord Xinling, I never expected to meet you here," Qiudao said. "Two of you, come safe and sound, why not gather inside?" said Lord Xinling. Ji Yanran, who had previously been somewhat unhappy, did not speak up at this moment. Qiudao's tone changed and he said solemnly, "I have always known about the character of Lord Xinling, and Nianer is also very close to you. Now Qiao wants to entrust Nianer to your care. I have one important thing to do. When it's time, I'll come find Nianer." Although Qiao Zi can rest assured, Nian and Wuji are already close friends. I will definitely take good care of him. If Qiao Zi has any important matters, just go and handle them. He will not make any mistakes with me, said Lord Xinling. Qiudao nodded at the words and then instructed Fu Nian a few more words before turning around and leaving. Fu Nian knew he must have gone to find his father, but he didn't resist. He just looked at the receding figure and felt a bit reluctant in his heart. "Sir, the young master and I are also your friends, and you won't be alone here." Ji Yanran sensed her worries and comforted her. Upon hearing this, Fu Nian's heart warmed. "Thank you very much for Sister Ji's concern, I know. Since you recognize me as my sister, how about we call each other siblings in the future?" Ji Yanran smiled and asked. "Since Sister Ji has agreed, how could I refuse?" Fu Nian said, but in his heart, he accepted Ji Yanran. "Nian brother, haven't you had dinner yet? Why don't you go eat something with me?" Ji Yanran said. The three of them arrived at the inn and found a clean place to sit down. However, this shop can only serve some millet and bean soup, and the shopkeeper had to get a white-water chicken and take some jerky from the car to make do with filling the stomach. "I hope you don't blame Wu Ji for his poor hospitality," said Lord Xinling apologetically. "When we arrive in Daliang, Wu Ji will hold a banquet to entertain us well." Lord Xinling's words are too heavy. It's rare to have a hot meal and dishes in this rural wilderness. How can I be picky? Fu Nian said, whether in his past or present life, he has never eaten such crude food, but it's difficult for him to swallow it for a while. Ji Yanran picked up a wooden spoon and scooped a bowl of chicken soup for him. Nian Di, don't mind. Try this chicken soup, she said. Thank you, Sister Ji. Fu Nian gratefully took the chicken soup and took a sip. The chicken soup, which had almost no seasoning, was also incredibly delicious at this moment. A few more days later, the crowd on both sides of the official road increased, probably getting closer to the big beam. These days, Fu Nian never missed his daily morning classes and sword practice for a moment. On the contrary, during his journey, there was nothing to do, so he devoted all his energy to learning swordsmanship. I saw Fu Nian holding a long sword that was the same height as him, with his left hand holding the sword and his right hand pinching the formula. His body moved rapidly, and the sword light flickered. The sword's momentum was continuous and could not be ignored. Swordsmanship generally involves using the left hand as a force and the right hand as a support. Because the right hand changes the attack angle during the attack, it may deviate from the center of the body. In such a situation, if you exert a lot of force, your body will tilt to one side. If the opponent gently pushes away your sword, your weakness will be exposed. After performing a set of swordsmanship, Fu Nian wiped the sweat off his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. Ji Yanran has been observing from the sidelines all along. Although this swordsmanship may not be considered exquisite, its victory lies in the fact that every move and technique attaches great importance to the foundation, which must be passed down by Qiudao. Nian Di, swordsmanship places great emphasis on basics, and this set of swordsmanship is very suitable as an entry-level choice. If you can persist and practice diligently, it will be of great benefit, suggested Ji Yanran. Ji Yanran's swordsmanship name has been passed down to the state of Wei, and is hailed as the second highest level of swordsmanship in the state of Wei. She is highly skilled in swordsmanship, and during this period, she also occasionally instructed the Fu Nian swordsmanship. Thank you for your guidance, Sister Ji. I will definitely work hard to practice, Fu Nian said respectfully. Not bad. Ji Yanran smiled and nodded, then turned her gaze to Lord Xinling on the side. I never expected him to work so hard. Lord Xinling looked at Fu Nian, who was also quite pleased and valued this child even more. As it was getting late, Lord Xinling decided to camp here tonight and chose a flat roof depression in Qiudao as his place of residence. After receiving orders, the accompanying guards and gatekeepers first cut wood to make stakes, surrounded a temporary wooden wall, and then dug trenches. In no time, the tent was set up and everyone gathered around the campfire, preparing to start a fire and cook. Nian, do you know why I chose to camp here? Lord Xinling asked Fu Nian, who had already set up the camp. He knew that Fu Nian was intelligent, but he had the intention to teach him the art of war. When camping, avoid lying in humid areas where water is difficult to escape, avoid being flat and surrounded by enemies on all sides, avoid sitting on mountains that are too low and guessed mountains that are too high, avoid slopes that are half-facing, making it easy for enemy arrows to enter. When camping, choose a place with a wide and flat top and steep sides, or choose a place with mountains and water on the back. Fu Nian replied. He was just throwing a brick to attract jade, teaching by example, but unexpectedly, Fu Nian was knowledgeable in military knowledge. I never thought you knew the art of war, Ji Yanran said. Do all the schools of thought still have any knowledge that you haven't delved into? Nian, he is only slightly proficient, knowledgeable but not proficient. The so-called military strategy is basically just a matter of discussing military affairs on paper, Fu Nian replied. At your age, it is not easy for you to read books. Moreover, the young master is one of the most skilled soldiers in the world. If you follow him, you will definitely be able to teach you a lot in the future. Ji Yanran said, realizing the intention of Lord Xinling. Being able to receive the teachings of Lord Xinling on military tactics is something that I am eager for. Fu Nian said, such a good thing, he will not refuse. Nian, if you are willing, Wuji should pour out all your resources and give it to you, said Lord Xinling. Lord Xinling brought Fu Nian up the mountain and arrived at a cliff, gazing at the scenery below. He said, the terrain is the aid of soldiers, and the steep terrain is the location of important points. Look at that mountain area, it's a hanging shape, which means it's easy for our army to advance, but difficult to retreat. When engaging in battle with the enemy in hanging shape, if the enemy is unprepared, it's easy to win by attacking. If the enemy is prepared, they cannot win by attacking, and it's difficult for us to return. If we want to break through the enemy, we need to set up in formation. If we have 10,000 people, we can set up a formation to trap the enemy, so that our army may take advantage of the situation and break through their camp. That area is a branch shape, and the so-dot called branch refers to the area where our attack is also unfavorable, and the enemy's attack is also unfavorable. At this time, luring the enemy to attack, when the enemy is halfway forward, our army suddenly counterattacks, which is the best strategy. Lord Xinling observed the terrain of the mountains and rivers, and spoke eloquently about dealing with Nian. For military strategists, observing the geography of mountains and rivers and utilizing geographical advantages for their own benefit is the best skill. Upon hearing the explanation from Lord Xinling, Fu Nian secretly exclaimed in his heart that although he had read military books, he had never practiced them. Now that Lord Xinling spoke like this, he was somewhat eager to try and wished to fight on the battlefield immediately. Upon seeing the hopeful expression in Fu Nian's eyes, Lord Xinling said, soldiers are important matters of the country, places of death and life, and ways of survival. Don't think of marching and fighting as simple as that. If you want to defeat the enemy, you must use military tactics to the extreme. This is the foundation of military strategy. The heart of fighting on the battlefield is driven by the blood of a man, so some people yearn for it, said Fu Nian. Lord Xinling looked into the distance, seeming to have foreseen something before saying, this war will soon come. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Assassins Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Assassins Attack. In the middle of the night, the wind grew stronger and the night was deep with heavy dew. A chill invaded and Fu Nian woke up from his sleep. He looked up and saw that Ren Huai, who stayed with him, was also awake. Sir, are you awake? A male voice asked. Yes, I want to go out for a walk, can I? Fu Nian asked. Of course, the person replied and went out with Fu Nian. He was originally a disciple of Lord Xinling, who sent him to guard the safety of Fu Nian. In the night sky, the stars are shining brightly, and the cold moonlight falls on the ground. A gust of wind blows away the withered leaves on the ground, creating a desolate scene. The weather seems to be much cooler than usual. The night breeze was gentle, and Fu Nian suddenly saw a figure flashing under the night sky. He immediately became vigilant, but before he could react, several feather arrows flew out and pierced through the scouts guarding the night. At this moment, Ren Huai also noticed something unusual. Knowing that someone was attacking the camp, he quickly drew his sword and shouted loudly, thieves are stealing the camp, everyone be on guard. Sir, you are too young to confront the enemy, hurry back to your account. Ren Huai said. I know, take care of yourself, Fu Nian said, but went to find Ji Yanran. As the saying goes, a gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. He knew that Ji Yanran's martial arts were not low, and having her around was the safest thing he could do. At this moment, the people in the tent heard the shouting of killing outside and stood up one after another, pulling their swords out of the tent. At this moment, a group of black-robed assassins had already entered the camp, and the two sides were engaged in a melee. Several black-clothed assassins approached Ji Yanran, and Ji Yanran wielded a sword as her long sword flashed a light, instantly slaying those black-clothed assassins. Nian, younger brother, don't be afraid. Sister will definitely protect you well, Ji Yanran said to Fu Nian, who was following behind her. Fu Nian nodded. Ji Yanran carried Fu Nian towards the tent of Lord Xinling, who had already led guards to surround the black-clad assassins. "If you don't put your hands down yet, you will be captured." Lord Xinling shouted loudly, sweeping a long sword and forcing the assassins to retreat. These assassins were fierce and fearless, even sacrificing their lives to charge towards Lord Xinling. Upon seeing this, Lord Xinling couldn't help but frown. These assassins are really stubborn and difficult to deal with. Lord Xinling swung his sword to block the sword of a black-clothed assassin, and with a twist of his spine, he knocked the black-clothed assassin down to the ground and captured him. Suddenly, the assassin's body softened and he died, committing suicide. "It seems impossible to capture these people alive and set up the mastermind behind the scenes," said Lord Xinling to himself. He no longer left his hand, his long sword stabbed repeatedly, and in an instant, more than 10 black-clad assassins died. At this moment, a strong wind came from behind Lord Xinling. He quickly turned to his side, but was attacked by a strong man holding a thick iron rod in one hand. Seeing Lord Xinling dodge, the strong man struck down again. Lord Xinling shook his sword, swung open his iron rod, and stabbed the strong man's chest with his backhand. With a hissing sound, the strong man's chest burst with blood, and he collapsed straight to the ground, suffocating and dying. At this moment, there were only 2 black clothes left in the field, one of whom was thin and had a short knife in his hand, with a silver-white cold gleam on the tip. The other one is relatively burly, holding a giant axe in his hand, with a cold and chilly edge. The 2 of them killed all the guards around and rushed towards Lord Xinling. Lord Xinling dared not neglect and waved his long sword repeatedly, shaking the thin man back. The burly man didn't hesitate when he saw the situation. He took a big step forward and swung a huge axe to strike at the head of Lord Xinling. Lord Xinling quickly swung his sword to block it, but to his surprise, he had just blocked the burly man's strike, and the skinny man suddenly took action. At this critical moment, Ji Yanran's long sword flew out of her hand, cutting through the void and cutting off the 3 fingers of the person holding the knife with one sword. The skinny man felt pain and let go of the short knife in his hand. He quickly retreated backwards, wanting to escape. Ji Yan deliberately let go of that person. As long as the person is still there, the clue remains unbroken. Upon seeing the opportunity, Lord Xinling once again welcomed the burly man, his long sword turning into a cold light, and directly took the burly man's throat. The sword of Lord Xinling was quite sharp, but the burly man dared not resist. Instead, he threw the giant axe in his hand and blocked the long sword. A pair of iron hands suddenly grabbed him, and Lord Xinling took a wrong step to avoid it. He approached the burly man again, and with a twist of his wrist, his long sword wrapped around his neck like a snake, wiping it from his throat. Lord Xinling sheathed his sword and sighed slightly as he watched the burly man fall to the ground and die. The group of black-clad assassins who attacked, except for the emaciated man, did not escape and all perished here. "Young master, this mark seems to be." Ji Yanran, who looked at the body of the assassin on the ground, exclaimed as she saw a plum blossom-shaped black print on the assassin's chest. Upon hearing Ji Yanran's words, Lord Xinling quickly stepped forward to take a look and indeed saw a plum blossom imprint on the assassin's chest. 7-heart Xianmei seal. He recognized this mark at a glance. Does he still want to kill me and me now? Lord Xinling felt a sense of sadness in his heart. Is there really no brotherly affection among the royal family? He doesn't understand and doesn't want to think about it. Fu Nian saw something unusual about Lord Xinling and recognized the mark. He knew it must be related to this matter. Thinking of his relationship with King Yu of Wei in history, he was a little more certain about his conjecture and said, "Lord Xinling, isn't this a plot of discord?" "Young master, there are many doubts about this matter, and it is not advisable to draw hasty conclusions. Moreover, if an assassin of this level wants to kill us, it may not be enough. If it were really him who did it, how could he be so indecisive?" Ji Yanran exclaimed, pausing for a moment on the word he. "Yeah, how can I suspect him? I'm in a daze. Lord Xinling shook his head and his expression returned to normal. He was also in the state of Zhao because of his strategic planning. The current trajectory is moving towards what he planned, and it is only time for him to return home. From beginning to end, he has only been a pawn of his. How should these corpses be disposed of? Ji Yanran asked. Since the other party intentionally left such obvious clues, they probably already have a backup plan. If they don't let go, they might hit the nail on the head and burn it all, said Lord Xinling, realizing Ji Yanran's intention. This group of assassins involved royal spies, but he found it difficult to intervene directly. His relationship with Brother Wang was already delicate. I can only write it down and slowly map it out. Suddenly, there was a sound of horse hooves, and a group of cavalry rushed to the distance. Each of these cavalry was wearing armor and shields, and at a glance, they knew they were well trained. A man dressed in armor, holding a reins, galloped his horse to the front of the camp, flipped over and dismounted, and quickly walked to the front of Lord Xinling. General Ji Huan arrived late, please forgive me. The visitor knelt on one knee and saluted. Although Lord Xinling has lived in the state of Zhao for many years, in his heart he is still the general who led them to victory in every battle. Ji Huan, how did you come here? Lord Xinling asked Ji Huan, feeling quite surprised by this matter. I have received a secret report that an assassin intends to assassinate the general at Guannan Mountain, so I will lead troops to protect the general. Ji Huan arched his hand. Upon hearing these words, Ji Yanran's face changed slightly. She could see the hint in it. This series of events was too coincidental. I'm afraid it was the towering palace wall stands on top of the inner city, with a height of over 3 zhang and a width of 4 feet. At this time, although it was also late at night, the guards were still meticulous, patrolling in front of the palace walls to prevent assassins from infiltrating. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves came from afar, and the defending soldier was awakened. He quickly raised his torch and looked towards the distance, only to see a carriage coming towards this place. After waiting for the carriage to stop, a man in a loose robe walked down and handed the command sign to the defending soldiers. The soldier took the token and saw that his face couldn't help but change. He quickly put down the token and respectfully presented it, allowing it to pass. Upon arriving in the inner courtyard, the magnificent palaces and towering palaces appear particularly magnificent against the backdrop of the lights. In the Mingwan Hall, a delicate man dressed in purple robes is sitting in the arms of a man dressed in royal robes. At this moment, only a sound of footsteps could be heard as someone entered. I have seen the king, Lord Longyang. The man bowed and saluted. Is it important for the Grand Master to come here? Wei Wangyu asked with patience, although he felt displeased when he saw the arrival. According to a report from a spy without a trace, the Huizi camp stationed outside the city left the camp without authorization under the pretext of patrolling and headed towards the Guannan Mountain area. Currently, Lord Xinling is located in Guannan Mountain. Upon hearing this, King Yu of Wei's face turned gloomy and uncertain, and he exclaimed in a fit of anger, "You're trying to make me believe that it's Lord Xinling who secretly ordered the soldiers." Throwing the jade cup in front of the case straight at Yao Boyu, the jade cup shattered on his forehead, and the fragments splashed onto his cheek, emitting a ray of bright crimson. "I dare not, but I am in charge of Wuying instead of the king. Such matters cannot be ignored, how dare I conceal them?" Chu Boyu lowered his head and said respectfully. "Humph." Wei Wangyu's anger subsided slightly and he said in a deep voice, "Don't spread this matter out. You keep an eye on it for me. If there is any news, please report it to me at any time. I will definitely wholeheartedly serve the king," Yi Boyu respectfully agreed. "You just step back," a soft and beautiful voice sounded. That handsome face, under the dim candlelight, appeared even more charming and charming. Yao Boyu withdrew from the palace, and blood slowly flowed down his face, but he paid no attention. The seed of doubt has already been planted, and even if we deny it no matter how much, there will eventually be a day when the cracks will be uncovered. It depends on who can't help it first. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Preliminary Approach to the Big Beam. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Preliminary Approach to the Big Beam. As soon as I entered the Wangji, the figure of Daliang city immediately caught my eye. As the ancient capital of Wei, the scale of Daliang city is beyond doubt, and its grandeur far exceeds that of Dongjun. This is Fu Nian's first time visiting the capital of a country. Although he has been used to seeing tall buildings in his past life, he still couldn't help but be attracted. In the outskirts of Wangji, a group of people including Sikong Wei Yong are preparing to welcome the procession of Lord Xinling. Sir Sikong, Lord Xinling has arrived. Okay. Wei Yong's face finally softened slightly upon hearing the news. Everyone, come with me to welcome Lord Xinling. Here, the courtiers exclaimed in unison. The carriage and horse of Lord Xinling, located in the center, slowly approached, and Wei Yong led a group of civil and military officials who came to greet him. Sikong Wei Yong sees Lord Xinling, and the king has ordered us to wait here for your carriage. Wei Yong arched his hand and said. Sir Sikong, long time no see. Lord Xinling helped Wei Yong up. At this moment, Fu Nian and Ji Yanran were waiting on another carriage and horse, but they were not able to participate in such occasions. Lord Xinling, the king has prepared a banquet to welcome you, and we will enter the palace right away. Wei Yong said. It's so great, I haven't seen you for many years, and I miss you so much. Lord Xinling nodded and rode with Wei Yong towards the direction of the royal city. The majestic palace stands in the center of the royal palace, with towering palaces, magnificent architectural complexes, and magnificent palaces. From any angle, it showcases the majesty of the royal family. A group of carriages and horses arrived outside the palace and stopped in front of the gate. The gatekeeper quickly approached and opened the palace gate upon seeing the situation, and the ministers rushed in. King, Lord Xinling is here. A monk came to the throne and reported. All right. All right. All right. On the throne, Wei Wangyu said with a smile, quickly announce, no, I will personally go and welcome you. Wei Wangxing stood up with an eager expression and walked towards the palace gate. As soon as they arrived outside the palace, they saw Lord Xinling and a group of important officials from Wei Yong rushing towards them. Farewell to the king. No gift. Wei Wangyu said indifferently. Brother Wang, you've suffered so much over the years. Wei Wangyu personally helped Lord Xinling Wei Wuji, tears filling his eyes. Brother Wang. Wuji feels ashamed. Wei Wuji, the ruler of Xinling, also sighed with emotion. Brother Wang. It's good if you come back. As long as you can come back, it's my good fortune. The good fortune of Wei. Both sides have a good understanding, or rather, they are brotherly and respectful. The frame slowly drove into the city, and the horses' hooves made a thud 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 sound as they stepped on the road paved with bluestone slabs. Daliang city is undoubtedly bustling. LV Nian opened the curtain and looked out the window. I saw various shops on both sides of the street, selling cloth, jewelry, jade, and so on, all in all. And there are even more pedestrians on the street, gathering in groups of 3 or 5 to discuss something. You must be visiting Wangdu for the first time. Ji Yanran smiled as she saw the curiosity in LV Nian's eyes. I have been in Dongjun since I was young and have never traveled far, said LV Nian. If you have free time, sister, I can take you around. Ji Yanran gently stroked Fu Nian's bun. He eventually treated me like a child, Fu Nian thought to himself when he saw Ji Yanran's actions. Before long, the car and driver slowly stopped, and the first thing they saw was a magnificent mansion. Nian Di, we're here, Ji Yanran whispered. Upon hearing this, Fu Nian regained consciousness from his daze. Master Ji, I wonder where Lord Xinling is. A man walked quickly and said to Ji Yanran. Young master, he entered the palace to meet the king, and we and the accompanying people returned to the mansion first, Ji Yanran said. We have already tidied up the mansion, everyone can rest first. The person noticed Fu Nian, looked at him a few times, and then asked Ji Yanran, Ji, who is this? Ji Yanran said, he is my younger brother and a person valued by Lord Xinling. He will stay here with me from now on. The person was slightly taken aback at the words and said, that's nature, that's nature. I'm Huang Zhang'er, I don't know what Swazi calls me. Zhang'er said. The surname Fu is LV, and his name is Nian. Fu Nian said. Zhang'er nodded and led everyone towards the mansion. He and Ji Yanran were assigned to an adjacent courtyard. Various flowers are planted inside, and there is a long corridor connecting the front courtyard. At the end of the corridor, there is a beautifully decorated wing room, with various paintings hanging on its walls. This courtyard is also quiet, which satisfies him quite a bit. He has been in Daliang for more than 10 days now. Although he is not alone during these days, he only thinks of his father, and Fu Nian's heart cannot help feeling a bit gloomy. Master, do you want servants to serve you? A sweet voice came, and a woman in a light purple dress walked in carrying a bucket of hot water. No need, I'll do it myself. If there's anything, I'll call you. Fu Nian waved his hand. Yes, I'm leaving. The woman blessed herself and retreated. Fu Nian walked to the bathtub, took off his clothes, and slowly sat down. Warm hot water slid down her skin and spread throughout her body. LV Nian closed her eyes and felt the genuine energy emerging from her body. Later, the person ordered to back up the medicine according to the list. The tonic diet and medicated bath used for internal skill training were sold out again, but the pill was not solved for a while. Maybe we can only wait for the adoptive father to find him. Feeling the slow movement of true qi in his body, Fu Nian couldn't help feeling a little excited in his heart. This feeling was unprecedented in his past life. After half an hour, Fu Nian stood up from the bathtub, wiped his body dry with a towel, changed into a loose robe, and walked out of the room. Suddenly, a fragrant breeze blew through his nose, and then a graceful figure fell into his eyes. Nian Di, have you ever rested well? Ji Yanran asked softly. I took a break for a while, Fu Nian said. Today is so boring, why not play a game with my younger brother? I believe you are also a good player, Ji Yanran suggested. Upon hearing this, Fu Nian smiled slightly and said, Sister Ji is so elegant. Nian should be my companion, but Sister Ji shouldn't blame me for being a stinky chess basket. How dare I blame you? Ji Yanran chuckled lightly. The two of them arrived at the pavilion, and the maid had prepared the chessboard for them. Fu Nian sat in the opposite seat, and the maid poured sweet nectar for each of them. Ji Yanran grabbed a chess piece from the basket and said, guess first. Fu Nian heard the words and looked at Ji Yanran. A person can never control their thoughts. 90 seconds are one thought, and in one thought, there are 900 lives and one death. He said, I already know. He kept observing Ji Yanran and then slowly said, I guess it's strange. Ji Yanran's chess pieces landed on the chessboard. 3, exactly an odd number. You seem to be able to see through people's hearts. Ji Yanran looked at LV Nian with a strange light in her eyes. It's just some little cleverness, not worth it, Fu Nian said. Subsequently, black and white pieces were placed on each corner star. Unlike later generations, today's Go is based on the position system, with white first and black later. There is also a saying from a respected figure, that experts hold the position of white, while those with lower levels hold the position of black first. Sister Ji, be careful. Fu Nian grabbed a white piece and landed it in the corner. Ji Yanran smiled slightly and held a black spot in the right corner. After some probing, Bai Zi gradually gained the upper hand, while He Zi showed signs of fatigue. Your chess skills far surpass mine, Ji Yanran said, knowing that the person in front of her was an extremely intelligent person. She thought to herself that her chess skills were extraordinary, but compared to the person in front of her, she was greatly inferior. Ji Yanran smiled and said, as the saying goes, observing chess is like observing a person, and your chess is also like your person. Your layout in this hand is balanced and in line with the ground. At first, it is ordinary and unremarkable, but in reality, it is a step-by-step killing opportunity that makes it difficult for people to defend against. She couldn't see through the child in front of her. Fu Nian smiled at the words and said, Sister Ji praised me falsely. His chess style is exactly the balanced style of later generations. He does not pursue rapid force on the chessboard, is good at long-distance competition, focuses on defense, has a solid layout, and mainly focuses on taking power. Peaceful and distant, subtly refined. What Ji Yanran didn't know was that Fu Nian's predecessor came from later generations and had 1,000-year leading chess skills. Now, with a little familiarity with ancient chess, he was already exceptionally skilled in calculation and was able to handle it with ease. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Adventures and Opportunities. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Adventures and Opportunities. The sunset is about to set, and the afterglow has dyed the sky. A towering city sits amidst a line of red clouds. The sky is not yet dark, and the city is dotted with lights. The streets of Qingshi are full of fire trees and silver flowers, like the Milky Way falling into the mortal world. Before nightfall, the streets were filled with the gentle and melodious sounds of buildings, boats, and boats. Tea houses, wine shops, and gambling shops were already bustling, and the fragrance of tea, wine, and powder filled the long street. In the past, men's wide sleeves were like the wind, and women's skirts were swaying, gradually unfolding a brilliant picture. The ancient city was bustling. The final afterglow is ultimately engulfed by the darkness under the Stork Tower. At the head of the Hongshui Bridge, there was a plain white dress with half-curled black hair. A few strands of hair hung down from the temples, light and graceful. Her jade face was like snow, her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, and her eyes were clear and gentle, looking forward to her. Accompanied by a young child, with clear eyebrows and beautiful eyes, red lips and white teeth. 10 miles of prosperity, 1 night of fish and dragon dance, a drunken dream of the river and mountains. The night market is bustling, with countless lights and flames. He and she are tall and short, yet they are harmonious. Suddenly I turn my back, she gleams in sparse and obscure lights. Fu Nian suddenly understood the meaning of Jia Xian's words, perhaps that's it. Nian Di, this night market is really lively. A clear voice rang in his ear, and he turned his eyes to see the woman smiling brightly. I'm afraid it will be even more lively, Fu Nian replied. He knew that Ji Yanran bringing him here to see the night market was not a sudden rise. There are at least 5 or 6 different directions on the street, with 11 or 2 people walking, some like tourists, some like vendors, some scholars playing with folding fans, and some merchants carrying bags. There are old and young people, with different costumes and movements, but he could tell that these people are quite skilled in martial arts. Without exception, these people's eyes were all directed in the same direction. The Stork Tower, the towering vermilion tower standing in the darkness. But you don't understand the charm, Ji Yanran scolded softly, with a smile still on her lips. At this moment, a person arrived, a confident person. Ji everyone, long time no see, don't come safe. A soft chant came, and under the night, a figure slowly walked forward. His people follow his pace, neither too fast nor too slow, confident. It's not in vain for us to come here, as you are the main leader, Ji Yanran replied. This must be the friend mentioned by Lord Xinling, who feels like old friends at first sight, the person asked as he looked at Fu Nian, his tone full of exploration. Young man Fu Nian, I have met a senior. My name is Yang Gongxie. If you are a friend of Lord Xinling, then you are my friend. Why be polite? You and I can be considered brothers. Brother Yang, Fu Nian said again. Good brother, Yang Gongxie said with a happy expression, we should have gathered together today, but some people seem to be impatient. A person came to the corner, dressed in a black robe, but still appeared thin and thin. The most noteworthy thing is his face, not that he looks handsome, but rather because he is ugly, very ugly. The left side of this face seemed to have been cut off by someone. His nose and eyes were pulled askew, not one nose, half, not a pair of eyes, but one. His right eye was left with only a black and deep hole. With the appearance of this person, those people no longer disguise themselves and their murders are exposed. My gang leader, please, the extremely ugly man said. Upon hearing this, Yang Gongxie said to the second person, I'll go first. Then he walked towards the Stork Tower. Arriving at the front of the building, two figures flew down from above, blocking his path on either side. These two people are both wearing black clothes and wearing hats on their heads, making it difficult to see their faces clearly. Yang Gongxie smiled calmly and lifted his foot, ready to go upstairs. The two of them reached out together, clapping their palms with a powerful force, as if they were sweeping mountains and seas towards Yang Gongxie. Yang Gongxie, however, did not dodge. He raised his arm and grabbed the wrists of these two people with his 5 fingers. The two of them were startled and immediately exerted their strength, but they wanted to use their internal strength to shake back Yang Gongxie. Unexpectedly, a wave of cold true qi seeped out of their hand meridians and charged directly towards the heart meridian. The two only felt their bodies stiffen, unable to move, and their internal forces were even more unable to function. I could only watch Yang Gongxie step up the stairs, disappear from their sight. Yang Gongxie pushed the door open and entered, with a person sitting upright in the building. His face was very ordinary, even considered ordinary, but his eyes were as sharp as a blade. This Daliang city is too small to accommodate your people. His voice was calm, but it contained an irresistible sense of oppression. Yang Gongxie smiled and said, I don't know whether Huanzhou Tower or Daliang City, but I have to come myself, for the sake of being alone. You have a deep grudge against my Feipen gang at Huanzhou Tower. If you come to my territory, I cannot help but ask, said Yan Xiong. I've come here to give you enough face, Yang Gong said wickedly. The blazing breath emanated from Yan Xiong, causing the air to become twisted, as if everything around him would turn into ashes in the next moment. A red palm power was unleashed from Yan Xiong's hand, burning the space around him like fire. Yang Gongxie let out a soft snort, and the cold air spread from him, forming a frost and facing Yan Xiong's palm. The two palms collided, blending ice and fire, with two palms intersecting, one hot and the other cold, stirring throughout the entire building. The two of them gathered their strength together, separated from each other and staring at each other. Ji Yanran, who was outside the building, saw the commotion inside and looked at the extremely ugly man, saying, if I don't pass your level, I probably won't be able to go upstairs. She recognized this person, Lu Qinghe, the former Jade-Face Lang Jun, and Lu Yu, the current 6-hall leader of the Feipen gang. Upon seeing this, Fu Nian stepped aside and had confidence in Ji Yanran. Ji Yanran drew her sword and unsheathed it, with the tip pointing towards Lu Yuhan. The sword's light shone brightly, illuminating her beautiful face and highlighting her eyes, as if they were stars. She remained silent, and the sword in her hand had already been pierced. Lu Yu's eyes turned cold with hatred, and the sword in his hand was unsheathed. His sword is very unique, with a pitch-black body and a blade as thin as cicada wings, just a narrow piece. At the moment when the sword was unsheathed, there was a faint cry of sorrow in the air, like the weeping of ghosts. His sword was as eerie as his people. Ji Yanran felt a chill in her heart as the eerie sword had arrived, coming first and then later. The sword in her hand trembled slightly, flowing gently like flowing water, melting it away. But the sword did not end. The quivering sword body suddenly broke up, like a fine flying sand shot at Lu Yuhan, or like a rainstorm that was so dense that people almost suffocated. At such a close distance, no one could avoid it. A fine, sandy sword pierced through Lu Yuhan's body, and blood mist drifted out. His body was covered in dense sword scars like spider webs, all of which were very fine. He remained motionless in place, as if unaware of the terrifying scars on his body. Blood gurgled down and dripped onto the bluestone slab. At this moment, Lu Yuhan was like a lifeless blood man, letting the blood wet his clothes and boots. Lu Yu's lips trembled with hatred and finally uttered a sentence. His voice was hoarse, as if thirsty for a long time. Not bad. A sword. His body eventually collapsed. Fu Nian looked at the group of people approaching to the left, but they remained indifferent. Let's go. Ji Yanran threw away the long sword with only the hilt in her hand and pulled Fu Nian upstairs. The two people in front of the building were attacked by cold poison and are now carrying the weight of fate. How can we stop them? As for those who are hidden in the dark, they are calm and have never seen any movement. You can count it, a familiar voice came from inside the building. Fu Nian and Ji Yanran entered, while Yang Gongxie and a cold and fierce man sat on one side each. The cold and stern man looked at Fu Nian, with a faint ripple in his indifferent eyes. Fu Nian looked at him and their eyes met. His heart is as cold as his people, without any warmth, and this coldness is a kind of calmness. Fu Nian turned his eyes to look at Ji Yanran, and he shook his head slightly. This person has no intention of taking action, he is waiting for a result he wants. A flat boat came up from the river, with a person standing at the bow of the boat, with a graceful demeanor. Xiao Shuxian lifted it. Wearing a green robe with straight embellishments, a refined and scholarly appearance. He flew out of the ship, landed on the shore, and went upstairs on his own. If you're not in a hurry, may I ask for a tip? The sound is ethereal, elusive and ubiquitous. A figure came from afar, making it difficult to see clearly, as if it were real or illusory. Just in the next moment, he has already arrived in front of him, which should be beyond doubt. Xue Zhu stopped and looked up at him. Who are you? Like you, I am also here for my friends, he replied. As his words dissipated along with his people, his figure suddenly disappeared. Xue Zhu lightly lowered the jade flute in his hand, suppressing the sword that appeared from an unknown time and place. Xue Zhu slapped it with one palm, and countless palm shadows appeared, resembling reality in illusion. There was a sense of confusion between reality and illusion that was difficult to distinguish. That black-robed envoy was just a sword, transforming into countless sword shadows. The interplay of palms, swords, and shadows becomes even more complex and confusing, making it difficult to see the authenticity. He sensed the true sword. He extended two slender fingers and gripped the sword, causing a trace of blood to slide down the blade and drip onto the ground. The black-robed envoy withdrew the sword from his hand, and the blade remained smooth, except for a nail-sized gap at the tip of the sword. I fell behind. The black-robed envoy looked at Xue Zhu. Xue Zhu ignored and walked towards the Stork Tower again. The black-robed envoy also went towards the Stork Tower, just as previously mentioned, their purpose was the same. It seems to have arrived in an instant, but the place where they appeared just now was still empty. Now, the two of them are standing. You're here. Yang Gongxie's gaze fell on Xue Zhu. I took one step first, Xue Zhu said, as if someone else was about to arrive. What identity did you come from? Yan Xiong looked at the person, who was completely hidden in a black robe. This is the first time Fu Nian has seen the cold and sharp man speak up. I came as your friend, the black-robed envoy replied. After a moment of silence, Yan Xiong said, having multiple friends is always good. The night is getting darker and the people on the street are no longer there. You just never know how many people are hidden in the darkness. A sound of hooves sounded, and a neat and uniform pace came, especially shocking in this quiet place. Since this person has arrived, he has already made a decision, said a voice in the darkness. These figures hidden in the darkness left one by one, sinking into the darkness silently. A carriage drove slowly in the night, and the sound of hooves was particularly loud in the silence. The lights on the street corner have also turned off, and the pedestrians on the road are no longer visible. But the absence of pedestrians does not mean there is no one. Which young master is in the car? A man in armor rode on a horse and asked when he saw the royal decoration on the car. Behind him was a group of imperial guards dressed in red armor, with no less than 200 soldiers at first glance. A series of brave soldiers, wearing green helmets and slanted-back machetes, with their red sword jackets fluttering in the slanting wind and rain. Behind them were several rows of horses, with a bright white top military officer in front of them. They looked at the long spear, and the blood on the spear was clear and slightly raised, which was particularly eye-catching. A large group of people were covered in black, but the sparrow remained silent, standing in a solemn silence under the night sky. The car curtain was lifted, and one person leaned out of the car, revealing a white and elegant face. It turns out to be General Zhua. It's a pleasure to meet you. Lord Xinling's voice couldn't detect any emotions. General Zhua, how could he be here? This person's name is Zhuozhu, and he is the commander of the armored army of the Forbidden City. He is also the head of the armored sect of the Wei Kingdom, with a body full of hard qigong that has been trained to a perfect level, making him invincible to weapons and knives. It's just a night patrol, Zhuozhu replied. Young master, are you coming to the Stork Tower so late to enjoy the wind? General knows me, that's right, said Lord Xinling with a smile. His smile was very beautiful, but the darkness obscured the expression in his eyes, appearing somewhat desolate. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Ambassador to Longyang Jun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Ambassador to Longyang Jun. There are always some things in the world that cannot be explained clearly. After that night's fierce fighting, everything returned to calm. But no one knows what is hidden behind the scenes. Fu Nian stepped into the hall, his gaze fixed on the main seat, and respectfully said, Fu Nian has seen Lord Xinling. In this era of valuing etiquette, he is not good at acting casually in public. Nian, please sit down. Lord Xinling waved his hand and gestured. Brother Nian, come to sister's place. Ji Yanran walked over with a smile on her face, pulling Fu Nian's sleeve and pulling him towards Ji Yanran's side. Fu Nian's gaze swept over everyone one by one. In addition to Xian Ling Jun, Ji Yanran, Ren Huai, Zhang Er, and others, there were also Yang Gongxie, Shui Zhu, and other people in the audience. Yang Gongxie glanced back at him when he saw him coming. The people of Qin are flourishing day by day, and they are launching a large-scale attack. The 6 kingdoms are already in danger. The king's general will soon come to the altar and appoint me as the superior general to resist the tyranny of Qin. However, with the power of Wei, it is difficult to resist the tyranny of Qin. I want to write a book to seek help from the 6 kingdoms, join forces with the martial arts heroes of various regions, and discuss major plans together. Wei Wuji, the ruler of Xinling, said in a resolute tone. Lord Xinling, we admire your chivalrous name and therefore join your sect. We are willing to help you fight against the enemy, but there is something I can do for you. Just give orders. A middle-aged warrior stood up and arched his hand, saying. This person has a heroic face, a tall figure, and a pair of bright and lively eyes. It was obvious that he was a practitioner. Seeing this, everyone stood up one after another to express their opinions. I am fortunate to have obtained such success from all of you. Wei Wuji, the lord of Xinling, clasped his fists and arched his hand with a moved expression. For a moment, the atmosphere was extremely harmonious, and everyone was a hero, with a sense of mutual appreciation. However, in addition to the main battle faction led by Situ Wei Yong and me, there are also the main peace faction led by the royal family Wei Xian and others in the court now. In previous wars, our Wei army was defeated by the Qin army, and there were many people in the country who feared Qin, and the king was also indecisive. Wei Wuji, the ruler of Xinling, frowned slightly, seeming worried. May I ask if you all listen to me? Ji Yanran stepped out and bowed to everyone present, speaking loudly. Everyone saw this and looked at Ji Yanran, wanting to know her opinion. But it doesn't matter, said Wei Wuji, the ruler of Xinling. Young master, since the king has completely cleared up his past grievances and summoned you back to his country, he wants to worship you as the superior general. There must be a sense of resistance against Qin in this. And if he doesn't lean towards you, Wei Xian and other peacemakers have already occupied the court. The reason why he is indecisive is twofold. Firstly, it is because of the great power of Qin, and secondly, it is because of the places where soldiers die and die. Now, it is necessary to have the last opportunity for the king to make a decision. Ji Yanran said slowly. How should we proceed? Said another person. We need to rely on one person. Ji Yanran turned her eyes to look at Wei Wuji, the lord of Xinling. Who? Lord Longyang. Ji Yanran blurted out 3 words and then said again, young master, have you ever found that as a gift? Wei Wuji looked at Yang Gongxie. Yang Gongxie had a wicked idea and walked to the courtyard. He opened the long box and a jade green, crystal clear sword caught everyone's eye. This sword is said to be the Qinghong sword made by O Yezi using the essence of the jade mountain and black gold. Shuejusu had a liking for elegance and recognized this sword in an instant, with a hint of amazement flashing in his eyes. Not bad, it's this sword. Thanks to Brother Yang for taking the trouble to find it, said Wei Wuji, Lord Xinling. Now that you have obtained this sword, you also need a messenger, Ji Yanran said in a voice. Sending a sword is just a small matter, I think everyone present is willing to go, said a bold man. His palms were wide, thick, and rough, with twisted muscles and a layer of golden iron like luster. This person is the Xian Iron Hand Renping. A pair of iron palms can be said to be invincible, and even if it is a sword, it is difficult to harm him at all. This matter cannot be brought to light. All the gentlemen are highly respected people in the martial arts world, and rumors inevitably spread. In my opinion, there is one person who is just right. Almost no one in Daliang City knows him, and he is a child who is not very noticeable. The most important thing is that I believe in him. Ji Yanran looked at Fu Nian. Upon hearing this, everyone turned to Fu Nian, thinking to themselves that they didn't know what the origin of this young child was and why she valued him so much. If you can help Lord Xinling, I will remember my wish. Fu Nian said solemnly. I believe in you, said Wei Wuji, Lord Xinling. Brother Fu is really a delightful person, Yang Gongxie looked at Fu Nian. Since both Lord Xinling and Master Ji have trusted Brother Fu Nian, let Brother Fu Nian handle this matter. You should have no objection, right? I naturally have no objection. Upon hearing this, Fu Nian arched his hand and said, Nian will surely live up to everyone's expectations. In the bustling street market, a car was driving towards the East City. Fu Nian opened the curtains of the car and looked out the window at the bustling scene, with a calm expression and no emotional fluctuations. Suddenly, he was caught in the gaze of a man dressed in blue. He led a young child and the two walked on the street, showing no concern for the bustle, as if nothing in this world could touch his heart. He gives people a feeling of being ordinary and ordinary, without anything special, yet different from ordinary people. This contradiction harmoniously exists in him, as if he should have been. If you insist on using one word to describe him, it is to live in harmony with the world. As the carriage gradually drove away, the two of them disappeared from Fu Nian's sight. Shortly thereafter, the carriage stopped in front of the bustling mansion, and a plaque hanging on the lintel indicated the owner's identity. What are you doing here, doll? The guard in front of the door asked as he saw that the person was a child. Fu Nian handed him a token and secretly placed a golden leaf in his hand, saying, "Give this to Lord Longyang, he will meet me on his own. Just wait a moment, I'll report to Lord Longyang." The guard put away the token and saw that his face was as if it were real, and walked towards the mansion. Fu Nian stood at the door waiting for a moment. After a moment, an old man came out of the mansion and said to Fu Nian, "Follow me, Lord Longyang is already waiting in the mansion." Fu Nian followed the old man to the mansion and arrived at a courtyard. There is a rockery in the courtyard, with many flowers, plants, and trees planted beside it. Behind this rockery is a small building. A person outside the courtyard caught the gaze of Fu Nian, who should be a man. His face was wrapped in a layer of white cloth, he was wearing linen clothes, and his long hair was scattered, covering half of his face, only revealing a pair of eyes. With a hunched waist and a sword on his back, he walked slowly forward with light steps, as if the wind would take him flying. One of his hands is broken, while the other only has 2 fingers. Unable to think much, Fu Nian followed the old man into the courtyard. Fu Nian has seen Lord Longyang. Fu Nian approached the small building and said calmly, "What kind of person is this?" "He is dressed in white clothes that surpass snow. Under his sword eyebrows, which are neither thick nor light, his narrow and long eyes are like murmuring spring water, warm and moist like a spring breeze. His nose is like a hanging gallbladder, straight like a dark blue mountain. His thin lips are slightly lighter in color, and the corners of his mouth are slightly raised, making him appear more charming and unrestrained. Although he is a man, his clear and beautiful appearance is even more than that of a woman." "I see you are a swordsman," Longyang Jun said, looking at Fu Nian. "The boy has practiced swordsmanship for some time and has some basic knowledge," replied Fu Nian. Longyang Jun nodded lightly and looked at the child again. Although her face appears immature, there is a calm expression between her eyebrows. "Who are you here for?" Longyang Jun spoke, his voice deep and pleasant, like a jade bead falling on a plate, clear and melodious. "King Wei." Fu Nian looked up and looked straight at Lord Longyang, his eyes clear and devoid of any impurities. Longyang raised his eyebrows and looked at Fu Nian with a smile on his face, "King of Wei." "The King of Wei needs someone to make him believe in his choices," Fu Nian said lightly. Then Fu Nian opened the wooden box, and the green rainbow sword emitted a soft light under the sunlight. "That's my reason. Do you understand Xiangjin?" Longyang Jun's autumn eyes fixed and asked. "He is a famous swordsman, whose splendor is like a hibiscus that begins to emerge. Observing his appearance, it rots like a row of stars, observing his light, it is as turbid as water overflowing in a pond, observing his fractures, the rocks are like rocks, observing his talent, it is as radiant as ice." Fu Nian slowly spat out, his voice clear and fluent, "This is the best sword in the world. What the King of Wei needs is such a famous weapon." Longyang Jun stared at Qinghong's sword for a moment, then turned around and stood with his hand down. He sighed softly and said, "Please let him rest assured that the king still values brotherhood." Immediately after taking the Qinghong sword, the cold light flashed and the sword body instantly transformed into thousands of sword shadows, enveloping the entire courtyard, with a faint sound of sword sounds echoing through the sky. His posture is elegant, like a fairy dancing a sword, with quick and graceful movements. Zheng. The Qinghong sword suddenly thrust forward, as if the dawn had broken through the pitch-black night, blooming with dazzling brilliance. Then it suddenly turned back and wrapped itself in its sheath. "Did you see clearly?" Longyang Jun leaned over and looked at Fu Nian, his eyes seeming to be profound. "What a sword!" Fu Nian nodded and said, "It's a sword, not a sword." Returning to Lord Xinling's mansion, there were only Lord Xinling and Ji Yanran left in the hall. Fu Nian looked at Lord Xinling and bowed. "He asked me to tell Lord Xinling that he still values brotherhood." Upon hearing this, Lord Xinling remained silent for a long time before saying, "I wish so." "Have you ever said anything else?" Ji Yanran looked at Fu Nian. He taught me a set of swordsmanship, and we were just discussing swordsmanship, Fu Nian said slowly as he met her eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Lord Xinling's Worship to the General. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Lord Xinling's worship to the general. The night grew darker, with only a few stars hanging alone in the pitch-black sky, displaying loneliness and desolation. A carriage slowly stopped in front of a mansion, and a middle-aged man walked out of the carriage. His figure quickly disappeared into the darkness. As he stepped into the hall, the person he wanted to see was inside the house. The person bowed and said, Wei Yong has seen Lord Xinling. Lord Xinling stood up and helped him up, saying, Wei Xikong, you're welcome. There are only 2 people here, so there is no need to be presumptuous, just step into the theme. I heard that the great king will soon appoint you as the superior general, in charge of the Hedong army. You can act according to your own circumstances, Wei Yong said. Although Lord Xinling had anticipated it in his heart, he was still moved by it. After Wei Yong left, Ji Yanran walked in with Fu Nian. Young master, but this matter has already been resolved, Ji Yanran asked. What should I do next? Lord Xinling looked at Ji Yanran. Qin attacked Wei 7 times, 5 were confined, the border cities were completely removed, the literary platform fell, and the capital was burned down. The Great Liang was not suitable for military development, so it was better to station troops in Ani and point the troops directly at Xianyang. Lv Bue came to power and continued to engage in close and distant attacks. Over the course of 5 years, he captured 30.7 cities including Jinyang, Yusi, Xincheng, and Langmang in the state of Zhao. Cutting off the 2 cities of Qinggao and Xingqiu in Wei, and occupying the southern Liang and auxiliary territories of South Korea, the world has been suffering from Qin for a long time. If the young master sends troops, Zhao and Han should respond. At this time, you will gather all the heroes of the world in Ani, and the other countries will also send troops to help when they hear the name of Lord Xinling. In this way, the 6 countries can unite and form a harmonious alliance. Ji Yanran spoke confidently with a determined expression. Then act accordingly, Lord Xinling nodded and praised, saying that all of this should have fulfilled his wish. It's just that the 6 countries are not united, they are restraining each other, and if the 6 countries cooperate, it will inevitably involve many interests and it may be difficult to achieve the goal. Ji Yanran reminded, in this case, the young master needs to prepare early. Lord Xinling said, I know for myself that as a commander, one should coordinate the entire army. I have my own confidence. Fu Nian on the side only listens more and speaks less. He has never been a talkative person. Unlike in previous history, in the Battle of Heshi 3 years ago, the Zhao Wei coalition recaptured the important town of Ani and once again established connections between Heshi and Hedong. This is the first time in his life that he has been involved in a chaotic world of chasing deer. That year, the king of Wei built a platform by the Bian River and appointed his younger brother, Prince Xinling Wei Wuji, as the superior general and Pang Nuan as the deputy general. Under the high platform, Wei soldiers lined up on the left and right, all dressed in armor, wielding long halberds, exuding a murderous aura. Looking at them, it was heart-stopping. Lord Xinling, dressed in armor, stood on a high platform overlooking the army, with confidence and solemnity on his face. I have been ordered by the king to suppress the state of Qin. Who among the lords would like to join me in attacking the strong enemy? Jun Lang of Xinling asked in a loud voice. Vow to follow the general to the death. The soldiers of Wei below raised their arms and shouted in unison, deafening. Lord Xinling nodded and raised his hand to wave the command flag. The sound of the horn suddenly sounded, and Wei Wuzu immediately ran forward, neat and uniform, engulfing the mountains and rivers. Where is Ji Huan? The end will be here. Ji Huan rode forward and clasped his fists. Under your command, the Huizi battalion and 5,000 cavalry advanced one step ahead, serving as the vanguard army and paving the way for all armies. Here. Ji Huan responded and turned to enter the army. Li Bai and Bo Shi, let you two be the left army generals and the right army generals, leading the left and right armies to march with this general. No. The two agreed in unison and retreated into the formation. Finally, Lord Xinling looked at Pang Muan and said, General Pang, I have appointed you as the general of the rear army to coordinate the logistics. I know you are the talent of a great general, so I can rest assured to entrust this important task to you. I will not let you down. Pang Muan arched his hand. Embark. With a wave of the command flag and the sound of drums, the Wei army surged northward like a torrent, with a majestic momentum. When leaving the city, the people watched from the sidelines and discussed extensively. The Qin people have once again violated the rules. The Qin people bullied me too much. The old man hates me. My eldest and second sons died under the iron hooves of the Qin people. If it weren't for my old age, even if I had sacrificed my life, I would have driven these Qin dogs out. Alas, the Qin people are brave and skilled in battle. Where can we win? Let's hope for other troubles. You're afraid you're a spy of the Qin people. The crowd glared angrily. Regardless of the discussions among the onlookers, the Wei army still set off from Wangji and headed towards Ani. In the palace of the king of Zhao, a group of high-ranking officials from the state of Zhao were divided into left and right, with serious expressions. Zhao Wangdan sat high on the throne, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. What do you think of the officials, Lord Xinling of Wei, who has sent troops to Ani this time and intends to engage in collusion again? When Lord Xinling was exiled to the state of Zhao, he had always had good relations with the officials of Zhao, and the pro-Wei faction had a considerable influence in the court of Zhao. If the courtiers support his own, it happens to be his intention. However, his physical condition has worsened over the years, and he is still unharmed. However, if he goes, he may not be under the control of the new king. He has made a decision in his heart. Zuositu Zhaohao stepped forward and said, Lord Xinling has great ambitions, which is truly rare. However, this move is quite risky. The state of Qin is strong and prosperous. If we rashly launch troops, we may face a counterattack from the state of Qin, and the consequences are worrying. Since the Battle of Chongping, our state of Zhao has been unable to fight anymore. The Battle of Chongping more than 10 years ago was a lifelong pain for him. In the confrontation with the state of Qin, Zhao was no longer able to support it, so he had to abandon the steadfast Lianpa and replace him with Zhao Kuo, the son of Ma Fujuan, in order to open up the situation. Upon hearing this, Zhao Xiangyu Qing refuted and said, Our state of Zhao and the state of Qin have long been sworn enemies. If the state of Qin exists for a day, the heart to destroy our state of Zhao will not die. Now, the 6 states have been suffering from Qin for a long time. If our state of Zhao sends troops to form an alliance with the state of Wei and jointly resist the state of Qin, then the 6 states will surely make every effort to help each other. In this way, even if the Qin army is powerful, how could the 6-nation alliance fear it? I believe that envoys should be sent to 6 countries to persuade them to join forces and send troops. Once successful, it can also dampen the morale of Qin. This is great kindness. King Lianpa is willing to lead troops to conquer the Qin bandits. An elderly man with graying eyebrows stepped out and bowed, If you give me 100,000 soldiers and horses, you will definitely defeat the Qin bandits. Lianpa is a veteran general of the state of Zhao, with extremely high prestige. I agree with you. Everyone agreed in unison. Prime Minister Yu Qin and General Lianpa all expressed their opinions, and the other officials naturally responded. Zhao Wangdan hesitated for a moment before finally nodding and saying, since that's the case, I have approved General Lianpa's request to go on the expedition. In Xinjiang, South Korea, the Prime Minister was openly reviewing official documents in the mansion when he heard a report from a guard announcing that Prince Xinling of Wei had sent troops to Ani, intending to cooperate. Suddenly startled, Lian hurriedly said, "Prepare your carriage quickly. Enter the palace to meet the king." "Yes, Prime Minister." The guards hurriedly left. He opened his clothes and hurriedly left the mansion. Grandfather. As soon as he opened the door, he met his young grandson who was coming towards him. "This is a doll carved with powder and jade." Without paying attention to him, he got on the car and ordered, "Hurry up, enter the palace." Although Zhang Liang was young, he was much more early-witted. It was the first time he had seen his grandfather running so fast. The open-ground car quickly drove into the palace, with no obstacles on the way, reaching the inner court. Opening the underground car and heading towards King Han's sleeping palace, the guards outside the palace immediately stopped and drove, saying, "Zhang Xiang, please stop." Opening his brows, he said displeased, "I have something important to discuss with the king." The guards dared not stop him, but it was not easy to let him in. They could only bow their heads and apologize, "Zhang Xiang, it's just that the king is currently." With a cold snort, he brushed his sleeves and said, "Hurry up and report to the king. If it delays national affairs, can you afford it?" Upon hearing this, the guards had to grit their heads and go in to report, but after a long time, there was still no movement. As his patience gradually exhausted, a monk hurriedly walked over and said, "Your Majesty, if the Prime Minister really has something to do, he will come back tomorrow." Upon hearing this, he suddenly changed his color and said, "This matter concerns the safety of South Korea, and there is no room for hesitation." The temple person hesitated for a moment and had to take him inside. As he walked quickly into the room, he saw a woman with her back to him, kneeling on the ground to beat Han Wangen's legs. Han Wangen closed his eyes and enjoyed the service of a beautiful woman. "Old minister, see the king." Han Wangen opened his eyes and glanced at the open ground, displeased and said, "So it's the Prime Minister. Hurry up and step down, step down." The woman immediately stepped down upon seeing the opportunity, and King of Han waved his hand to let the attendants leave, saying, "Prime Minister, I wonder if there is anything important to talk to me about." A frivolous and overly alcoholic appearance. Opening his mouth, he suppressed his spleen and said, "I have heard from the king that Lord Xinling of Wei has sent troops to Ani, intending to carry out a joint operation and join the forces of the 6 states to attack the Qiudao rebellion Qin." "Oh, what do Wei people want to do?" Han Wangen man said casually. After a moment of silence, he said, "Your Majesty, among the 6 kingdoms, our country, South Korea, is the weakest. The Qin people's determination to defeat our country, South Korea, has never ceased. Today, with the cooperation of the Wei state, it is a glimmer of vitality for our country, South Korea. Therefore, I earnestly request the king to send troops to Ani and form an alliance with the state of Wei to jointly deal with the state of Qin." After hearing this, King of Han couldn't help but frown and say, "How dare you let me send troops to Ani? If the Qin people don't invade in these years, even South Korea can be stable for a while. If the Qin people were to send troops to attack, wouldn't it be a waste of life?" Angering the Qin people again, King exclaimed excitedly, "You are the Lord of Korea. If you send troops, you will surely uplift the hearts of the people. If Korea does not fight, it will be no different from waiting for death. Moreover, it will also be hostile to the other 5 countries. Such actions at both ends of the snake and mouse are truly unwise." Upon hearing this, King of Han hesitated and said, "Prime Minister, if, as you said, the other 5 countries really send troops and cooperate, how about I agree to send troops to Korea? The alliance between Wei and Chu and the state of Qin require our country to make a decision. The former has no intention of destroying our country, while the latter all wants to destroy our country and our kingdom. Zhang Xiang, I have my own decision." King Han seemed to be annoyed by his attitude and said in a deep voice. Openly aware that this was the maximum compromise that the King of Han had made, he could only say, since the king has already made a decision, I will leave first. Opening his mouth, he left the palace of the king of Han and got on a car, heading towards the mansion. As soon as I entered the mansion, I saw Longyang waiting in the courtyard and couldn't help but smile a bit. Grandson, how did you come? Longyang approached and said, my grandson is here waiting for my grandfather to return home. My great-grandson, he patted his shoulder with satisfaction, is much more sensible than your father when he was a child. He will definitely inherit my position and serve Korea in the future. Seeing him so openly, Lao Hui felt very relieved. According to the original history, Han Fei's father was King Li of Han, who was the younger brother of King Huan Hui of Han and the uncle of King An of Han. Han Fei and King An of Han were cousins, but the 9 songs of the heavenly journey were changed haphazardly, and Han Fei's age was directly reduced by half to become the 9 sons of King An of Han. Here, the 9 songs of the heavenly journey setting is adopted. End of this chapter.